4, and this is a work session of the Billings City Council. So welcome everybody. Thank you for braving the weather. It's not as cold as it was yesterday or the day before, so but it shows your commitment to these important things that we're going to talk about tonight. The focus of our meeting tonight is on crime prevention and public safety, in particular through prevention. So I'm going to make some introductory remarks that describe a little bit how we got here and what we're going to be doing tonight. And then I'm going to open it up for public comment on either things on our agenda or not on our agenda. But I'll explain why, if you're here to comment on the issue of public safety, item number 1, you might want to wait until after we've had some presentations about halfway through the meeting, which I would predict to be about an hour in. But I'll leave that up to you. I do want to remind everybody at the table to speak loudly. We do not have microphones here. There's a microphone in the pizza box in the center. So it's a big room, so make sure you project so everybody can hear. If you're speaking into the microphones, do speak clearly, but that at least is amplified for members of the public when you make public comment. So anyway, I just want to remind everybody here, or if you don't know, let you know, that the city has 5 strategic goals that the City Council has identified. And the first one of those is improving the safety of our community. Now, of course, public safety can mean different things to different people, and improving public safety can take many different forms. Most of our minds, though, immediately turn to crime and crime prevention as a preeminent risk to public safety because it's so visible and it's featured in the media and it's a topic of conversation. But there's lots of other things that impact public safety, like suicide, for example. I think last year Billings had approximately 30 suicides. That's almost 3 times the number of homicides that we had in our community and roughly double the national rate. Or traffic safety, or cold nights in our homeless and where they can find emergency shelter. All of those things do impact public safety, and I want to acknowledge those realities and acknowledge that you may want to make comments about that, but I do want to stress that my expectation is that most of our conversation tonight is going to be focused on the connection between public safety and crime prevention. But that's up to the council and our participants. You'll also remember that on December 4th, we had another one of these that's not really a round table, what do we call this? Square table discussions, horseshoe table discussions. And at that meeting, we focused on also reducing crime, but the emphasis was more on people who are already involved in the criminal justice system. We talked about violent crime, we talked about domestic violence, probation and parole, incarceration, jail space, those other things that had that common theme of people who are already involved in the criminal justice system tonight. So where are we going tonight? The focus, based on input we've got from the council and the public and those who are planning the meeting tonight, was that the focus is not so much on the past, but more on the future and preventing people from becoming involved in the criminal justice system, especially children. And so the idea is to focus on things that can be done and are being done that are more proactive and farther upstream of the problem. And of course, the advantage of that is that if you can prevent someone from getting involved with the criminal justice system, going down that path of crime, not only can you prevent that first generation but of criminal activity, but also break the cycle that tends to perpetuate itself through the generations. So it's a very big return on investment. Now, some overlap, of course, between these two areas of proactive prevention and more reactive dealing with the problem is inevitable. And I'm not going to try to say you're off topic there, but I do want to remind people that the focus will be primarily upstream prevention. So the goal also, I just want to stress, is to listen. We were asked by the community and the city council to listen, to have a opportunity for the public to provide feedback, and to gather information and to have a general discussion about these topics. So that's the plan. If you came here expecting to walk out with a 10-point list of action items, I fear you're going to be disappointed. We don't have that much time. It's not really the focus. If it emerges some great things that we can move forward, great. But I just want to be realistic about that, and also say that the council will be going through its own strategic planning process, having a retreat here in the next couple months, and I'm sure that a lot that comes out of this meeting will be taken into account and discussed by the city council to the extent it involves city government. A few other just quick disclaimers. Of course, the city has very limited experience. We're kind of new to this. You know, we get involved on the policing side after a problem has developed. We don't have a department of mental health. We don't have a department of substance abuse prevention or of family restoration. Those are things we don't have experience with. We don't have departments to do that. We don't have money to do that. But we can play the role of at least providing a forum for discussion for our community. These are community problems. They're not just city government problems. And that's what the goal is tonight. So a little bit about the mechanics. You'll see that there was an agenda. I don't know to what extent there were copies available, but basically the agenda for tonight, and everybody at the table should have one, is broken into three parts. The first part, which will take probably about an hour, we've allocated, will be presentations about the data and the background on the connections between public health, crime, and the linkage between those two. And that'll be orchestrated by representatives that we have from the Riverstone Health, which is the city and county health department. And that'll be the first part. And then we'll move into what's being done in our community already. We want to learn about what's happening and who are the players. And we've got some great representatives from different organizations who will turn it over to for their element. And those two things will take about an hour. And then the last half of the meeting will be more directly involving everybody at the table. It'll be just a general discussion. We'll have an opportunity for questions. We'll have an opportunity for public comment about what they've heard in those presentations. And we'll just, we've got some questions, but we'll need everybody to be actively involved in that. Again, my goal is that this meeting not go on forever. We've got a lot of members of the public who are not expecting probably a long meeting. We've got a lot of people who've been nice enough to respond to our invitation. And if we give them another invitation, we want them to come back. So I'm thinking that if we don't take a break, council, but we try to aim to be done in about 2.5 hours, which would be about 7:30 to 8 would be my target. Council, or others, if we, I don't think we're going to do that shorter than that, but we can have that discussion when we get closer to that time. So with that kind of background, I'm now going to, before we have some introductions about who's at the table, and I turn it over to Chris to introduce our first presenters from Riverstone Health. I am going to give an opportunity for members of the public to comment on anything that's on our agenda or not on our agenda as you would like. Again, if you want to comment on the discussion about public safety, we will have an opportunity to do that again after we've had presentations from our presenters, probably in about an hour. So, but if you've got to leave and you want to be heard, we don't want to fail to give you an opportunity to be heard at this time. I'm going to open it up for public comment. That's the podium. We do ask that if you're comfortable to tell us your name and address, and keep your comments to approximately 3 minutes. And go ahead, Mr. Brooks.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council, distinguished guests, concerned public. Dan Brooks with the Billings Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to speak briefly to our efforts on crime prevention through environmental design. This is our program that we've been running since 2020 in partnership with the Downtown Billings Alliance and the Billings Police Department, offering free of charge to our business community to come out, do a security survey of the business or organization's property, recommend some potential improvements to that property to help with safety of that space. I would submit that it's been very successful for those businesses that have implemented our recommendations. And again, just want to emphasize that we offer that free of charge to our businesses and organizations throughout the community. We're also working more closely with Sergeant West and the city's task force tasked with working on the city's SEPTED efforts. And I want to just quickly give a shout out to one of the other city staffers doing really good work on this front, and that's Nick Miller with the Billings Parks Department, really taking those SEPTED concepts and implementing them in all that he does, doing really great work there. I also want to highlight our very successful SEPTED training that we hosted in partnership with the City of Billings, and send another thank you to City Council for budgeting to send city staff to that training. We had an overbooked class of 50. The National Institute of Crime Prevention generally only allows 50 into class, but we had such good interest that we were a little overbooked. I'm asked often if we would be open to doing it again, and my answer is yes. But we just need to know that we've got enough community buy-in to fill those seats so that we can keep that price affordable for people to come and do that training and continue to, as I like to say, spread the gospel of SEPTED. The last thing I'll mention here is that the Billings Chamber is going to lead our leadership exchange delegation on an aspirational city visit in June to go to Grand Rapids. We hope to learn more about how they're addressing their public safety issues, homelessness, housing. They've got a SEPTED program as well. So hopefully we can take what they've learned and not necessarily copy it, but use kind of those great bright points and tweak it to make a Billings solution and bring those back here and report back to you. So thanks for hearing me out, and I appreciate everybody's participation tonight.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for your efforts. Is there any other public comment at this time? Any other public comment at this time? Okay, nobody is. Okay, then go ahead, go to the podium, and please, if there's anybody else, go ahead and just go down and stand by the podium. That way we don't have any transition time.
Good evening, my name is Ana Contreras. I'm here, I was alerted of this meeting just recently.
You're doing great. Just take a big breath. You'll be fine.
My family and I have been hurt since 2019. My husband turned upside down by a large group of Billings white supremacist cops in the Billings Police Department, headed by that man right there, Richard St. John. He knows a lot about what has been going on, and several of you city leaders here. I heard about this meeting last minute. I wasn't prepared to be here. I'm a good citizen. There have been rumors said about me, horrible things. I don't even know where to begin. Obviously, I'm not well mentally, and I'm sure that will be used against me as well. How is it I'm a good citizen? I went to Billings West High School. I graduated in '98. I haven't been able to work a penny. I was supposed to get my family out ahead. I had plans of getting a home, but each time there were roadblocks that I didn't know where they were coming from. A lot of it even started before 2019. And where's justice for me? this is the United States of America. Nobody has heard me. There's no civil rights for me, apparently. No human rights. A lot of it started when my dad, I was getting texts. I called the Billings Police Department to tell them, that I was being cyber stalked. I found out later there was technology being used when me and my daughter, I'm a single parent, my daughter and I, we were living in a duplex, and right as I drove in, I would get texts with my address. Nothing else, obviously that I found that as threatening. So I called the Billings Police Department. Nobody ever said, they never called, they never followed up. Eventually, we were evicted, my daughter and I. My daughter had to hear from the cops. Because I went to, there's just been so much going on. That to tell, I was evicted for no reason. Nothing of my own doing. Nobody heard me. They did call the legal services, I'm sure, because they've been calling everyone that they can. And even I heard some named Nathan West somewhere. I had an encounter with him at Alfredson's. I called the police department. I talked to somebody. There was just the way that he initiated certain, back and forth with me. And I called it in because he gave me some dirty looks that if looks could kill, that coming, and I didn't know he was an officer until I went around and I saw that it said, Billings Police Department. I said, oh, now I know, because all of this had already started.
And I apologize for cutting in, but we're beyond 4 minutes, so if you would just kind of wrap up and then maybe send us an email to council@billingsmt.gov, because you're probably...
Yes, I will. I'm sorry for taking up longer, but it's something that the good members of this community, if you guys really care about justice and, public safety and issues from the homelessness, because not all homeless are getting themselves to that point on their own. There are other factors. There's a lot of things that are occurring that, like I said, that if you that are the good members of this community want to know, well, now you know. And they did kill my dad. Just as they had texted me, I did receive a text saying that my dad would die by a certain date. My mom, and I'm sorry, I'll wrap it up here. My mom never received, now I know they intercepted the calls. My mom had called to get my dad, he had stage 4 cancer. My mom called to get my dad help, a wheelchair, a home health aid, because we couldn't lift him. We never got that help. But 1 hour after he passed away, I did get a text saying to control, control ensures that I live. That was the message. And where was that all coming from? The Billings PD, I'm sure they know a lot about it. And the feds and everybody. But thank you for your time, and I'm a mess, I admit it. But it has gone on too long, we have been hurt. And you good members of the community, well, now you know a little bit. And you will hear, because I will write a book about all of this.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We're sorry you're in that situation, but thank you for sharing your experience.
Thank you.
My name is Catherine Card. I'm an ordained Lutheran pastor, and I mentioned that because that's kind of from where I'm speaking. I've been involved in the sheltering of our unhoused neighbors for several years, and I see and have seen, and I've been unhoused as well when I was much younger, the interface between the criminal justice system and homelessness. Homelessness is such a huge factor in the public safety all the way around. So many homelessness and not having adequate housing, people suffering because they're out in cold like what we had this weekend, impacts our whole community, costs money, costs lives, and I believe also costs us morally and ethically and faithfully. The lack of good housing and the lack of shelter contributes to the time spent by our police and firefighters to care for those who are in jeopardy of dying, care for those who are on the streets. One of the factors that connects the criminal justice system and homelessness is the criminalization of survival behaviors for people who have no place to be. The behaviors that they have, that we who have been homeless have, living on the sidewalks, sleeping on the sidewalks, being in public view, that puts us that makes us noticed and puts us in the public criticism. I want to just say this from a spiritual standpoint, that this weekend was an example, but it will go on, and it goes on year-round, of the need for a low barrier, real low barrier, 24-hour, 365 days a week, low barrier shelter that is handicapped accessible, that is available for people, for anyone to come in and get basic shelter. How important that is for the health and safety of our whole community. It takes something from our spirit, it takes something from our ethics and our morals when we refuse to provide that on a regular basis. People who are unhoused in our community are citizens like you and me, are our neighbors. Just like any of you are my neighbors. Everybody is our neighbor, and we really need, on many levels, money-wise, but ethically, to provide for everyone to have decent housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Please, refrain from the applause. No end to that one, I'm afraid. So, any other public comment? Any other public comment? Okay, we'll again, if anybody's going to make comment, please stand up by the podium, and that way we know there's going to be somebody else. Go ahead.
Good evening, my name is Miss Contreras. I don't know why we have some tracks in all of our vehicles. Everywhere we go, they chase us, the ambulance, the city police, the fire engine trucks. We were coming on North Avenue South. We was heading and we stopped at the light there, and there was an engine truck, and he was looking down at us because the engine trucks are big, and then the car, my car, I was driving, and then I told my daughter, take a picture. And she took a picture, and they smiled at us. Ever since they stopped that crap that they were doing to us, everywhere we go, policemen, ambulance, and then my husband was alive at the time, and I told him, let's go see where the action is. And he said, okay. So we were out there by Sam's Club, and then we followed him, and we were following them so close that we ran right just behind them. He went in the red light, we went behind him. All of a sudden, they stopped the sirens, and I told my husband, they know town, what's wrong with them? We did this several times, and they just turned their sirens off and whatnot, and just turn around and take off. I said, I'm pretty sure they know what they're doing, but we finally found out that we have trackers in our vehicles. Why do they have to do that to us? We're not no criminals. We don't drink, we don't smoke, we don't party, we don't gamble. I'm a nice Christian lady all my life from the Assemblies of God. I was raised in a Christian home in the state of Texas, And there's no reason for none of this to be happening to us. That's not right. We're good citizens. And if they only knew, if that guy only knew what we did help this Yellowstone County, me and my husband, help this Yellowstone County in some other things that I'm not gonna talk about it right now.
Very good, thank you. Any other public comment? No one is coming forward, so we'll close the public comment period and move on to item number 1. So I think the first order of business before we turn over to Chris is just to find out who's at the table, literally. So let's start here. We've got a lot of people, so if you just say your name, your organization, if you've got a nice little summary of, and you can do it in 15 seconds of anything you want, feel free, but we'll move fairly quickly. Councilmember Shaw, why don't we start down here?
Sure. Kendra Shaw, City Council. I represent Ward 1, which is the downtown, the south side, the north side, all the way up to Hilltop in the Heights. Goes through the medical corridor. So this gentleman.
Yes. And you also Ward 1, same area as described. Roy Neese, Council Representative Ward 2, which is north of Hilltop in the Heights.
Denise Joy, Ward 3. I guess it's kind of the Midtown area.
Bill Kennedy, Ward 3.
Scott Aspenleiter, Ward 4.
Tom Ripsis, Ward 5, which is essentially 19th and Colton, south and west.
And Mike Boyette, Ward 5 with Tom.
Bill Cole, I should have said before, I'm the mayor.
Chris Kukulski, City Administrator.
Gina Dahl, City Attorney.
Kevin Eflin, Assistant City Administrator.
Tom Bonner, Love in the Name of Christ, representing the faith community tonight.
Annie Hasek, Vice President of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Yellowstone County.
Good evening, Mike Yakowicz, State Legislator with House District 51.
Terry Todd, Gratitude in Action, and Chair of the Local Advisory Committee.
Ellie Stanton, AmeriCorps member with Billings Police Department's Domestic Violence Investigations Program.
Erwin Garcia, Superintendent.
Michaela Louisa Floyd, Project Coordinator for the Native American Farm Project of the Billings Community.
Karen Sylvester, Certified Prevention Specialist for Yellowstone.
Zach Tarakitis, Director of Substance Abuse Connect, and I am a school board trustee for Zone 4, the downtown schools out to Lewis and Clark.
I'm Melissa Henderson. I'm the Director of the Health Promotion and Environmental Health Teams at the Health Department.
I'm Eric Owen, I'm the Vice President of Public Health and Clinical Services at Riverstone Health.
And John Forte, President and CEO, Riverstone Health, Yellowstone County Health Officer.
Very good, thank you, everybody. With that, I'm going to turn over to our City Minister, Chris Kukulski, for any other introductory comments that he has, and also to introduce our first presenters. Chris.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll keep my comments brief. I'm going to turn it over to the Health Department in just a second. Part of what I have written on my dry erase board in my office, learning over the past few years, a series of questions that I kind of asked myself and our community relative to this interface between public health and public safety. You know, do we understand or do we believe in our community we have a crime problem? And I think unequivocally most of our citizens would say absolutely. Do we believe, do we understand that we have a substance abuse problem? There again, I think most citizens would say yes. Do we understand that trauma is often at the base of those issues? And I don't know that our community knows the answer to that. I've certainly been learning a lot over these past few years. And that is not to say, please hear me, that those who experience trauma in their life are destined for substance abuse or for crime. But if you look at those who are involved in criminal activity, if you look at those who are incarcerated in our system, you will see a very high propensity of individuals who have had and experienced trauma in their life early on. And that's something I will acknowledge I was completely ignorant to just a few years ago, and is a foundation of a whole lot of what I've been learning and what kicking it off and turning things over to Eric Owen and Melissa Henderson with Riverstone Health to set up the first of a handful of public comments to kick things off. And so with that, I want to turn it over to you, Eric, and go from there.
And Eric, as you get your PowerPoint, it looks like you're ready to go. I was remiss in not making another introduction earlier on, and that's our county commissioner, Mark Morris. Mark, raise your hand. And I apologize, if you want to pull your seat up.
Actually, there's a seat right there I was just gonna point him towards.
I'll be right here.
Okay, so we should have made sure that Mark was literally at the table. So with that, back to Eric and Melissa. As you guys are coming close to around 20 minutes, I'll probably just raise your hand so that you know how you're doing time-wise.
Or are you gonna help out? Oh, I can read it. Do the over-the-shoulder slide advance there. Well, thank you, everybody, Mayor, Council, for having us today.
And Eric, I'm just gonna ask you to keep your voice up for that, for everybody, that way Community 7 can hear us, so.
For those who are presenting, we're gonna amplify their voices, sorry, thank you.
Alright. Okay.
Please, they tell me,
Keep it
don't
close
put
to
it
your
below
mouth.
you, but
Keep it
speak
close.
straight into it,
Alright.
thank you.
So thanks for having us. The mayor and Chris did a great job of kind of teeing up why it's important to talk about really early prevention. And in order to kind of understand the importance of early prevention, it's important to understand the impact that sustained trauma being experienced during childhood can have on the life trajectory of an individual. Before I kind of dive into that, I do want to just acknowledge the other folks in the room who are also doing prevention work, the police department, the chamber. Prevention is a continuum of things, and today the part of prevention that we're going to be talking about is really early upstream prevention. Not some of the things that the chamber has mentioned and with SEPTED or what the police department does with hotspot patrolling and all of that kind of stuff. So let's go in here. So what happens to kids when they experience trauma? And when I'm talking about trauma, I'm talking about big T trauma, not, I fell off my bike and bruised my knee or I got a hurt shin at a soccer game. What we're talking about in terms of trauma that can have lifelong impacts on individuals is severe sustained trauma. Things like what's up on the board there. So, physical, emotional, sexual abuse, neglect, physical and emotional neglect, household challenges, severe instability in a household, loss of a parent, incarceration of a parent. And when kids are exposed to those things on an ongoing basis, that constant toxic stress and trauma has a dose effect for people. And if it goes on without protective factors for long enough, it can actually start to impact the neurological development of children in ways that has lifelong impacts down the road. And what that can do is, I'm just going to read a quote here, absent factors that can prevent or reduce toxic stress, children growing up under these conditions often struggle to learn and complete schooling. They're at increased risk of becoming involved in crime and violence, using alcohol or drugs, and engaging in other risky health behaviors. They're susceptible to disease, illness, and mental health challenges over their lifetime. And that is across socioeconomic spectrums. So as Chris said, poverty kind of contributes, but it is not the only factor that influences this. So these are some of the outcomes that can happen from sustained exposure to trauma as a child. And the good news is that adversity isn't destiny, and there are things that we know we can do to either prevent this kind of thing from happening to children in the first place, or in the horrible events that it does happen, to mitigate the impacts of it. And so we know that there have been multiple studies that have documented that substantial reductions in ACEs are possible and can have broad and sustained benefits For example, ACEs prevention strategies are associated with higher academic achievement and reductions in depression, suicidal behavior, arrest and incarceration rates, and substance use in adolescence and adulthood. So it's not all doom and gloom. We can fix this. And we fix it through helping our children have exposure to positive experiences, what we call positive experiences. And again, in a similar way to ACEs, we're not talking about they saw a TV show that they really liked and it made them laugh for a minute. The positive childhood experiences that we're talking about are real core supports that children need to thrive in their home and in their community. And these are 7 of the key things that we talk about. So ability to talk openly with family about feelings, feeling supported by their family during difficult times, feeling safe and protected by an adult in the home, feeling supported by friends, a sense of belonging to a larger group in the community, enjoyment of participation in community traditions, and relationship with at least 2 non-parent adults who take genuine interest in the child. So these are evidence-based things that we know if we can expose children to these things, they have a better chance of a positive life trajectory. So how do we get there? There's kind of 6 buckets of things that we can do that can set kids along that trajectory and make sure that they have exposure to those positive experiences in their life. So the one at the top is strengthening economic supports for families. How is that up there? It's not bad. I thought it'd be smaller than that. But strengthening economic supports for families, and those kind of fall into a couple buckets. That's things like financial policies that strengthen financial security of families. So that could be things like tax credits, policies that make access to affordable quality childcare easier for families, access to affordable and stable housing. So in the policy arena, those things help strengthen the financial stability of families. The other is promoting family-friendly work policies. So what are our employers in town doing around paid leave for parents, flexible schedules for parents so that they can be there to support their kids when they need them? The next one down the list is promoting social norms that protect against violence and adversity. And we do that through community education campaigns. And when you're looking at this, what you're focusing on is education that promotes safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments, reduces stigma around seeking help so that if people are victims of domestic violence or have substance misuse challenges in their life, they feel safe to ask for help in those situations. Legislative approaches to reduce the use of harsh physical or corporal punishments with children, and bystander approaches to mobilize particularly men and boys as allies in violence and abuse prevention. Spokespeople, trusted spokespeople. The next one down the list is ensuring strong starts for children. So this is how do we get kids into quality early childhood education, quality childcare, early childhood learning opportunities where the parents can help be involved in the development, healthy neurological and emotional development of their children. Then there's teaching skills. And when we're talking about teaching skills that have a real impact on preventing ACEs, there's kind of 2 buckets. One is teaching skills focused kind of at that late adolescent, middle school age range when kids are starting to experiment, they're starting to push the boundaries with their parents. For those of you who have had 14, 15-year-olds, you know what happens at that age. Starting to, kind of branch out on their own. That's a key point in time to start talking with kids about healthy relationships, healthy boundaries, how to stand up to peer pressure, things like that. The other key area to focus education and skill building is on parents. So teaching parents how to recognize healthy childhood development milestones, how to read to your kids on a daily basis and the impact that has on building relationships with those children, things like that. The next one is connecting to caring adults and activities, and this is a really important one. It kind of gets back to one of those 7 things, which is access to caring adults other than your parents and the development of the community around the kid. This kind of falls into the buckets of mentoring programs, and we do have some of those here in town. We have Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Friends of the Children, summer work programs. Others are before and after school programs are huge in this area, and I'm glad the Boys and Girls Club is here because they're a great one. We have the United Way Care Academy, we have the City Parks programs, we have YMCA. Those things create huge protective factors for kids in success in school and reductions in drug use. And the last one on the list is, in the unfortunate situations where we're at a point where we need to intervene to lessen the impacts. Things that are really important in those cases are access to affordable, high-quality primary care and behavioral health, and family-centered treatment approaches to substance use disorders. So Melissa's going to share some data with you all about foster care involvement in our kids, but to the extent that it's safe and possible, keeping the kids connected with their parents and in the home is an important protective factor.
Do you pass that?
You want me to click for you?
Sure. Okay, so I, as I mentioned, I'm Melissa Henderson, and I get to talk about data. I love data. I realize not everyone does. The challenging thing when we talk about community safety is it's a really complex generational issue, right? You could go a million ways with the data. It's going to take a complex, possibly generational solution. And so that's why we're kind of bouncing between talking about adults and youth. What you'll see is a really simple sampling of data, but there is a handout at the front, and I know everyone has one on their table too that has kind of everything that I have on the slides here, so you can kind of skim along with me as I'm going to go pretty quickly. And the way we broke it down is to try and mirror those ACEs and those positive childhood experiences. And lucky for you, Eric printed a copy of the ACE test and the positive childhood test, so you can kind of reference that along the way. So the very first one is abuse and household violence, right? We have people from the Family Justice Center here, but basically about 1 in 4 residents, adults in our county, have said that they have been abused. They've been hit, slapped, pushed, kicked, or hurt in any way by an intimate partner, and that can be someone in the home. Additionally, we know some of our youth data shows that 13% of youth have reported being victims of sexual violence before they turn 18. Household challenges. So this one is the one that always kind of punches me in the gut when I see it. 1 in 4 people in our community have considered suicide at some point in their lifetime. This is up. It used to be 1 in 5 pre-pandemic. But this is, if you think about this room, maybe it's Gina and the table all the way over here. That's a quarter of us, right, that have considered suicide. These are our neighbors, our kids, our friends, our mentors. We're consistently in the top 3, along with Wyoming and Alaska. It's sort of a race we don't want to win, but it's definitely a big issue that we're facing within our community. And that's a symptom of hurt, a symptom of trauma. Regarding challenges facing youth, we know based on some recent county youth surveys that kids are feeling a lot of the same things that the adults are. 41% met the definition of depressed. So feeling really sad every day for 2 weeks to the point that they just weren't really interested in their day-to-day. 23%, 1 in 4, seriously considered suicide. And the way you kind of discern, like, okay, are you just doing this for attention or are you really serious? is did you make a plan? 1 in 5 seriously considered a plan, thought about the means, thought about that. That's heartbreaking for our community, right? We're feeling pretty traumatized and sick. In terms of, we know that bullying is largely associated with kids' mental health, and our kids are being bullied, especially online. A lot of our kids are being bullied for the perception that they're gay, lesbian, or bisexual, for being who they are. Moving on to household challenges and substance abuse. So 43% of Yellowstone County residents' lives have been negatively impacted. We know that that's much more common among women, and it's significantly higher than the U.S. The U.S. is about 36%. Keep going. Man, I'm just breezing through this. This is great. In terms of alcohol misuse, so this can put people at risk, but it can also be, again, that self-medication, right? Like, I'm taking high-risk behaviors because my life is just really overwhelming. Our kids see this. They see this of adults. And so, you know, for Yellowstone County, we have quite a few that are drinking excessively, and that is defined as 2 or more drinks a day for men, or 1 or more drink a day consistently for a month for women, or more than 5 drinks in a sitting for men, 4 for women. We're doing better than Montana, or sorry, this is more than Montana, so we have more of an issue than the rest of our state. But we're doing a little bit better than the U.S. Our youth are also embracing these behaviors. So 1 in 5 youth have said that they've gotten into a car with someone who's drank and is driving. That's scary. And then about 10% have driven themselves while under the influence of alcohol. In terms of household challenges, so these kind of go back to what Eric was saying about income, right? Being low income doesn't mean you're going to have a substance abuse issue, doesn't mean you're going to have a crime issue, doesn't mean you're going to end up in jail. Same with divorce. Sometimes divorce is the answer for families that have a lot of violence or have a negative space. But our divorce rate in Montana is pretty good. On average, kind of 6 in the nation. As Eric mentioned, entering foster care, so we have a rate of about 7 kids per 1,000 residents versus about 3 in the U.S. So that's twice the U.S. rate. And if you ranked us all, we're pretty by the bottom. That's not, again, a good thing. Firearms is something that we definitely have to talk about in terms of violence. We are not saying good, bad, we want to lock them up. We just have to talk about the data, right? We know that firearms play a really big role in our community trauma, in our crime, things like that. And the number is increasing. 1/3 of Yellowstone County residents don't have, or they have firearms, but they're unlocked. We know kids accidentally get into these and play with them, but we also know a lot of people are using firearms to harm themselves. 62% of all youth suicides in Montana involve firearms. 66% of veterans, right? We know that things like gun locks can kind of stop that and prohibit that instant reaction. So just have to put that one out there. So in terms of youth injury and violence, pretty normalized towards guns as well. 1 in 5 youth reported being in a physical fight at some point in high school. Injury and safety. So unintentional injuries are considered preventable, right? Like they're accidents, but they are preventable. It's the 4th leading cause of death within Yellowstone County. But as you look at the common ones there, what's important to recognize is that firearms, suffocation, poisoning, carbon monoxide, overdose, jumping from heights, those are all most common ways that people suicide. And oftentimes suicide get classified as unintentional injuries or deaths because of the stigma associated. So we have to ask ourselves, you know, what is going on here? And then of course homicide, we're doing a little bit worse than Montana, but better than the US. And so these are just a few examples of those negative traumas that people have in our community. I think one other thing to mention about ACEs is, as a kid, you didn't have to be a part of the violence or part of the suicide for it to negatively impact you. It can be, hearing your parents talk about it, or a friend at school having that experience. Those all expose our kids to trauma, and then they take that with them to adulthood. In terms of positive childhood experiences, the data here is still kind of emerging. Montana is putting out some reports, and I know the Prevention Needs Assessment is asking about this. These are really things that build our resilience up, build our bubble wrap against the trauma of life. And so among adults, we're actually doing pretty good as a county. The vast majority have said, I have social and emotional support. I have those positive experiences listed there. I rarely feel isolated. We of course know this is more common among seniors, senior citizens, not senior youth. And then the last piece is all from the Prevention Needs Assessment, and Karen Sylvester, who's just a couple people down from me, is our local expert in this, and so I definitely encourage you to dig in, to pick Karen's brain about it. But these are the things that are going well in our kids' lives, things that are building them up, that are creating that protection. 70% of kids surveyed in our county participated in at least some form of an activity in school. That's an opportunity to meet a positive mentor, meet another adult who cares about them. These are things that can kind of counteract that dose response, if you will. Think of them as like vitamins for your trauma, so to speak. So with that concludes the data part to kind of build off of the need for the trauma education. And then I'm going to pass it to you. Okay.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Eric. That was just great and very informative. If anybody didn't get copies of the handouts, talk to us afterwards. I think there's some over there, or we might have some extra here. We'll move on to our next group of commentators. Just as a reminder, we're now moving into the section. We're going to talk about the good things that are happening in our community. There actually are people who are working on these issues and have been for decades. So we want to emphasize that, see what some of the resources are. Just a reminder to anybody at the table, we'll have an opportunity for questions. So jot down your questions. Let's not interrupt during the presentation, so do make a note, and then when we're done with the next couple, we'll go back and give you an opportunity to ask a question. So with that, Zach, and would you introduce yourself a little bit in Substance Abuse Connect? You're the director of Substance Abuse Connect, in case you forgot.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. Zach Terkides. I'm the director of Substance Abuse Connect, one of the coalitions here in town. And I think with hearing a lot of the heavy data that's shared and the challenges that we have, starting out with the story, Saturday afternoon, it's bitter cold, and I came down here to the library with my daughter. We need to load up. We're going to be home for a couple days and load up on books. And outside was First Presbyterian Church with volunteers in their van gathering people up to get out of the cold. We do live in a community that cares, and it's a community that takes action when they need to. I think in the work that I've been able to do in the last year with Substance Abuse Connect, and you'll see by no means an exhaustive list of coalitions that we have throughout the county and the region. We have a wide variety of coalitions that include hundreds and hundreds of organizations and their employees who care deeply about what's going on, and they have a variety of approaches to address these issues in our community. So there's work that has been going on for decades. There's organizations that have been around for a very long time, some of the oldest in Montana, that are doing the work that we need to be done. I think that what you'll find, the commonalities amongst a lot of these coalitions, is they're formed under models such as collective impact, where they're sharing data, they have a common vision, coordinated activities, consistent communication between those, and then oftentimes they'll have backbone organizations that support those efforts to make sure that those things stay coordinated as they move forward with these bigger issues that we have to tackle. All of those efforts take resources, and just like anyone else post-COVID, all of these organizations have limitations on the FTEs they have in place. the quality of folks that we're attracting to our community to live and work here and be involved in these things. Same thing as any other sector. I mean, we have challenges that exist for our organizations who want to get out there, do the work to help support people who have issues that they can't solve on their own. I think what's working well is we have high quality professionals in our community currently that are at the top of their sector that can guide us and show us as a state, not just a community, but as a state, how things can get done well. And a lot of that you'll see through the coalition efforts that are being done. They coalesce around a lot of our very vulnerable populations. We know that right now, being part of the school district, is youth are a big focus that I think everyone can get around. What does our future look like? It's going to be in our young people learning to do things better than maybe what we're doing right now. And that they can understand that there's a different way for these things to be handled, but they do live in a community where there's a lot of caring people to move that forward. Improving the safety of the community, and I think it needs to be said, as the city has brought together this meeting with crime prevention, is that the city and the county are very involved in all of these coalitions, both at the organizational level of being on their boards of directors to kind of influence and learn and understand what's happening. And so they're actively part of it, not just at a once a month, once a quarter meeting, but they're actively part of these coalitions at all levels. So, and once again, this is a very small list, but if you look at, we're talking substance abuse, healthy by design, getting people outdoors, making healthy choices on the front end, very preventative, suicide prevention, continuum of care, working on our huge housing issues throughout the community. Just about anything that's being done is trying to be accomplished through a group effort. And there's varying degrees of success there, just like anything else. And we're kind of in a post-COVID area where a lot of our timelines for getting things done was disrupted for a period. And so a lot of folks are resetting that and saying, well, what we thought we were going to get done from 2020 to 2023 looks very different now. And so there is a reset happening across a lot of our coalitions, and that's just to make sure that we can do the best effort with the challenge we have today. But I think generally, I mean, we can be optimistic that the work is getting done today. Is it at the level that we'd all prefer? Probably not, but that's going to require the entire community to weigh in on what are our expectations, how do we live as neighbors, and then using these organizations and efforts to help move those things forward for everyone in our community.
That's a great introduction. Why don't we pass the mic down? We'll stick to the order on the agenda, which next topic will be sort of this addiction. And Terry Todd, the co-founder of Gratitude in Action, is our commentator on that. So Terry, if you can introduce yourself and your organization and then go into whatever you've got for us. We asked each of these presenters to spend about 5 to 7 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, everyone in the room. So I am Terry Todd. I'm with Gratitude in Action. We are an organization that promotes recovery and sober living. But we also have been super involved in other things in the community. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the things that are really great in Yellowstone County, because I think that we don't spend enough time looking at the things that are positive, and then we can talk about some gaps in services. So on any given day in Billings, Montana, there are over 30 self-help groups that you can go to. There's over 20 Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. There's over 7 Narcotics Anonymous meetings. We have FCRC, which is a faith-based program at Faith Chapel. We have Power for Abundant Recovery. We have a lot of access to meetings for people who are wanting to do something different. And I don't think we always talk about that. We also have the Al-Anon family groups, so people who are suffering, whose children or spouses is having issues with substance use. There's places for them, as well as Alateen. There are some great, vibrant youth activities that we don't often look at. We have over 100 treatment beds. We have some great new inroads with what Buick is doing, and the fact that they're bringing some Billings Urban Indian Clinic has brought some great variety programs. They're doing talking circle, and there's just a lot of access to things that we may not have had in the past and we don't always look at. Another win for Yellowstone County is we have over 400 sober living beds. However, currently we have the highest percentage of certified accredited sober living in Billings. 6 of the owner-operators in Billings took what was needed so that they could become accredited with one of the 2 state standards, so that's a big deal. We have paths, so we've got the homeless outreach team from Rimrock embedded down at the DBA. They're out constantly. The crisis response teams are out in the community. And we've got 2 sets of path teams that are out working with people who have co-occurring disorders. So we've got some great things. One thing that I think we often do is we challenge the mission of some of our organizations. So if our organizations are specific for their mission, we can't expect them to take clients so when we talk about safe places to stay, there's lots of safe places to stay, but they may not fit every need. But that doesn't mean that the organization that's applying those the place should change who they are or change their mission. What we need to do is figure out where we have gaps, and we know that we have a gap in permanent supportive housing. So if we had a permanent supportive housing project similar to the one that a bunch of us just went and looked at in Boise, Idaho, we would be able to help people get housed and be able to keep them housed, because that's also a big part of the problem. Is when you get somebody into housing, but they are still suffering with substance use disorder, or they've got a co-occurring disorder and are unmedicated, or they don't have the life skills or social skills to stay housed, then we just create the process over and over again. So by creating a permanent supportive housing project where we can provide housing that has those case management supports, has actively someone like Riverstone, they are embedded in the building. What happens is people over a long period of time are able to stay housed, and that's just as important. It also would have that low barrier component where people who are just not quite ready to be in housing by themselves could stay for a period of time until they're ready to get there. So that is something that would be absolutely vital in the community. We've got recovery-friendly workplaces here. So we've got 26 businesses that have said, we want to be good business owners and help the people who are in recovery stay in the workforce. We know we have a workforce shortage problem, so how can we help people? So we've got a couple of hotels who came on board, and now they have a policy in place so that if somebody finds drugs in the room when they're housekeeping, what do you do with them? If there's no plan, then you don't know what to do. And so now we've identified that there's an issue. With some of our restaurants, they've decided like, hey, maybe it's not a great idea to offer everybody an after shift drink. Because when you're in recovery in the very beginning, you don't have the courage to say, no, I don't do that. So it's great to be able to have those conversations. We know that in Yellowstone County, we've identified that we've got to help some of the workers that are in these are high compassion fatigue jobs. So what could we do locally to help support those workers so that they feel validated, whether that's some kind of extra tax credit for jobs, whether that's as simple as helping them get tickets to different events, just so they feel validated and important. We need an access point. We need a centralized access point, not 988, not 211, but a place where 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, you call and you get somebody in Yellowstone County that can say, today there's a detox bed here. You need a sober living bed, you can go here. You need to go to a psych stabilization unit, we can get you here. We need an access point where it is local information and updated daily. It would be vital to our police department so that they know where to take people and how to have those things happen. We know that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And so we have to provide opportunities to connect people in our community so that they feel part of. That is going to take a big part of this. We know we have a drug problem. We know we have a fentanyl crisis. We know based on statistics the drugs that are coming through our community. The only way to change that is to allow people to become more connected with what we're doing in our community so that they don't feel so isolated and alone and the only thing that's going to work is a drink. We have some pretty vibrant organizations as far as those 12-step groups, and you can reach out to any of them by calling their local district representatives. They'll come in and talk to you in your business and tell you what would make things different. We have to just continue to keep focused on what we can do. One shortage that I can tell you we've identified time and time again too is we need more detox beds. And so I'm not sure who can stand in the gap in there. I believe Rimrock has 8 available. We have sent people as far as Portland, Oregon to try to get them into a detox bed. So that is something that we need currently here. But I do also know that the mission has been accepting more and more clients. We have the 4th Avenue hotel that's taking people. I know that there are lots of different places. What we need to know is where we can take somebody currently at any given time. And so thank you for allowing me to come. I'm excited. I'd love to talk about recovery because I know that it's the one way thing that can change a lot of lives. I was a problem in this community for a long time. And when I was able to find recovery and connect with the community, I haven't committed a crime in a very long time. And so I know that we can make an impact and it's not going to cost us a lot of money. So thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. I'm gonna remember that one. Michaela, you're next up on our agenda, and we're gonna turn it over to you and ask you to tell us who you are, what you do, and your thoughts.
Yes, thank you, council and public, for allowing me to speak on behalf of the Native American population. My name is Michaela Weaselboy. I'm the project coordinator for a program called the Native American Empowerment Project. We were a very small program and project that was created during COVID to help with the adverse effects during the pandemic for 3 certain criteria: domestic violence, substance use, and suicidal ideations. During COVID, we got a lot of money. Everybody did. It was thrown at us pretty randomly. And we were told, just do a couple assessments and see what your community needs. But we thought that that was too small of a mission for us, and we decided to go out into the community and reach out to different organizations and see where the gaps were. And wraparound services was something that we had identified. A lot of organizations are doing a lot of great things. We do work with GIA. They're pretty amazing in our community, and a lot of different organizations we are partners with. We work with the treatment courts, Equa Family Recovery Court, Star Felony Drug Court, YCDF, CPS, the Women's Shelter, the Mission. We work with all the organizations that identified the wraparound services were their biggest problem area, that they weren't able to identify a program to send individuals. So during that little COVID time, we were just told to do 70 assessments and just turn in that data, and that was all we needed. But over the course of 18 months, me and one other program community support specialist were able to connect with 175 individuals and put them on our caseloads. It's a different kind of case management. We do crisis stabilization, peer support, life coaching, and a bunch of different areas. Meaning that we connect with individuals that might not need case management or meet the requirements of case management for Medicaid to pay for, or whatever their health insurance might be. Case managers are paid very low and only have 1 or 2, 3 things that they have to meet the program requirements for those individuals. You get a case manager at the Mission, you get a case manager at Rimrock. They're all working on goals towards those programs for them to meet eligibility. Our program is the opposite. We work with the clients and they have identified their goal, and we go based off of that because they are their biggest advocate at the end of the day. We do needs assessments with them and work with them from 16 months to 2 years. At this time frame, we have 4 community support specialists with a caseload of 35 to 50, and all of those case managers and their clients are all high-risk individuals, working with those, some of them in this room actually, helping them advocate for housing, criminal justice matters, CPS cases, getting them into treatment programs, and then following them along for 2 years on any situation that might arise. We work with domestic violence individuals. We work with not just families, but our elderly population, our youth population. It's been a huge increase that we have seen for the last year or so that youth under the age of 18 have asked and requested our services. An age group that we weren't exactly looking to serve, but expanded because the community asked for it, and we decided that that was important to them. We not only create our program to meet what the community is asking for, we do it on the spot. A lot of our population had identified that culture was something that they were missing out on in their treatment programs. Not just substance use programs, but mental health, preventative work. So we started our dance class. So we have a Native American dancing teacher that teaches youth Native traditions and dances. We've done a beading class, we've done a dry meat cutting class. Connecting individuals to culture is really important. And this is not just for Native Americans. We work with non-Natives as well, and they find our programming just as important as a traditional route. We do a more holistic route. I think that Billings is an amazing community. I've been born and raised here, grew up here my entire life, and I think we're very rich in resources, but we lack policies and programs, the ability to work with those individuals based off of federal and state funding. I think it's really important that all of these organizations have huge hearts and love our community just as much as the next person, but we're limited on how many people we can serve, how we can serve them, if they have Medicaid, if they don't have Medicaid, and if they're currently sober or So that barrier right there alone limits what people can access. I think a huge problem right now that clients, and we're expecting clients to have, is their basic needs met. We can't have somebody go do drug testing 5 times a day to meet their probation requirements if they can't even shower, or they don't have basic food, or know where they're gonna stay the next day. It's not realistic. So getting those basic needs so that they're able to improve their social and physically economic situation is really important. And that's what we're trying to help with our community right now. We have our own hygiene closet, clothing closet. We're working on a food closet for our individuals as well, so even if they're at treatment, they can at least have a snack so that they can focus on their homework and working to identify the areas that are most important. Our clinic also provides transportation for all of our clients to and from their appointments, and that is not reimbursed by Medicaid. That is not reimbursed by any program. That's through our own dollars as well. The Billings Urban Indian Clinic has been expanding over these last 5 years. We are looking to add pharmacy, I can't say the eye doctor, ophthalmologist. Yeah. So we're working on doing that one as well, because these are all areas that our community has identified are a barrier. We never turn anybody away and never will turn anybody away. There's a lot of programs in the community that do have an exit list that they're no longer able to provide services to, and we completely understand, but we've never had that ever. So if there's a need, we'll fill it.
Great, very educational. Thank you very much. Karen Sylvester is our prevention specialist with the Mental Health Center. Going to do a little bit of double duty here, both I hope tell us more about the Mental Health Center, but special expertise or involvement is with youth. So turn it over to Karen.
I am Karen Sylvester, and I also help lead prevention efforts with Substance Abuse Connect. My world looks vastly different than what we've heard from most of these other people. What we focus on with my prevention is environmental. Everybody, all the kids, all the parents, everybody. We do realize that some groups, some demographics are more high risk than others. But from what we have heard from the kids with our focus groups and with our meetings and our interaction with kids is that all of our kids are in danger. All of our kids at any moment could make a bad choice. They could be exposed to something. Especially our middle school and high school kids, where they are at that point in their life where they're trying to fit in and figure out how they fit in. And so what we try to do is to give them the skills to be able to say no, to empower them to say no, I'm not going to, whatever the reason may be for them. In our conversations with youth, we have realized that we have done a pretty good job in educating our kids in how to talk about their mental health and how to talk about what they need, but we put the cart before the horse because we didn't do a good job educating the parents before we did that. So what we're getting feedback from the kids is, well, you tell us to go talk to a trusted adult. You tell us to go talk to our parents. And the response we get is, nothing. Go to bed. This is just drama. You'll feel better in the morning. Those kind of responses. Now, I will say to the kids, you know how scary it is for your parents? They love you. And you come to them and you say, hey, I'm struggling with my mental health. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. That's on us, because we have not done a very good job in educating them on how to address that when you come to them. So we've really been focused this year on parents, on adults, on educating, and you're going to see a whole bunch of things coming out in our partnership with the school district, in that we are bringing in all kinds of speakers. We're going to bring in all kinds of education as our dollars will allow for us to educate the adults in this community on what we need to be doing to help our kids. Whether you all want to believe it or not, you as parents, you're the #1 influence on your kids' life. And sometimes I think we forget that. And we forget that we need to be able to tell our kids what the expectations are for them, what we want to see happen for them. And so empowering parents right now is probably the best thing we can do to help the kids, because the kids are looking to the adults for guidance, and we have not done a very good job. When I sit and talk to kids, and they tell me, well, I think my parents are more worried about what's on their phone than what I'm saying to them, we need to look in the mirror and talk about what we're doing as parents. We're not doing some things that are right. If that's our kids is what our kids, and whether you agree with it or not doesn't matter. If that's their perception, then we need to be talking about what we need to do about that. So I think that as the work goes forward, I hope that everybody in this community will be a part of it. I hope that they will see that everybody has a role to play in what's going on with our kids, every single one of us, in whatever aspect it might be, and that we all need to join together to help our kids become and help this community to be what we want it to be for our kids. And this isn't it right now.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, that then concludes sort of the presentation component. Let's ask, the next step will be to just ask people at the table if they've got questions about what they've heard. That could easily devolve into a much general discussion, but let's not have that happen. Let's just stick with kind of straightforward questions so that we can then open it up to the public to see whether there's more public comment on this topic. Because I told people we would have to give them an opportunity to do that. If we wait till the very end of the meeting, people may have to leave and we won't be able to take into account what we've heard from the public. So let's take 5 or 10 minutes with kind of straightforward questions to some of our presenters, and then we will open it up for public comment on what they've heard, and then we'll dig into more general discussion, other questions, what some of our other guests here who didn't get a chance to speak, I'll start with them when we get into the discussion components. But anyway, questions for what you've heard. Councilmember Shaw.
Right, I have a question for Michaela Weaselboy. I have a basic understanding of where a lot of the organizations here get their funding. I'm sure it's more complex than what I get, but I could tell you some of the key players. But could you kind of just give us a little bit of an overview of where you get most of your funding? Does it mostly come from the federal government or the state, or are you raising funds, or kind of how does that work exactly?
That is a very interesting question and a very complex one. So the Billings Urban Indian Health and Wellness Center is a contracted IHS program, meaning that we get 1% of the federal IHS budget all allocated to us. And there's 5 urban centers in the state of Montana, and we are the largest. And data fluctuates with the Native American population. And I'm just going to say specifically the Native American population, but that's not the only population that we serve. The last census had stated that there's anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 Native Americans in Billings, Yellowstone County, at any given time. But that number actually fluctuates because we are a hub. That can go anywhere from 10 to 15 to 20,000 per year because individuals travel to this area for services specifically. We are a rural community in Montana, so we have the most of the medical resources, substance use, mental health, housing, employment. We are a resource hub. So we get 1%, and I'm going to shout out a number, it's $1 million. I believe that's the exact amount that we get for individuals who are Native American enrolled or descendants of, for us to subsidize their medical costs with us. And that does not cover the bills. We have federal grants, which was our original program is a SAMHSA grant, and we have a few other SAMHSA grants as well underneath us to help with some of those. We have a couple of IHS grants as well for diabetes prevention, and then third-party billing with Medicaid and private insurance, which is very small and does not keep those lights on as well.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Other questions? I didn't want to suggest only council members can ask questions too. Other presenters or whoever at the table. Councilmember Gulick.
Thank you. I guess maybe a question for friends with Riverstone Health. Thanks for providing the ACEs sheet here. That I guess one of my questions is on data. So when I'm driving, which isn't often, but when I am, I see a lot of aggression out there. I've had someone pass us when we're going to the speed limit in the center turn lane, and just I'm seeing a lot of that's a place where people have an ability to get aggression out. And so in terms of ACEs, is there alternative, it would be active transportation where you actually have ability to walking and running and riding. You have ability to productively blow off steam, perhaps. Is there research that suggests that there are lower instances of I mean, like, if you're blowing off steam, you're less liable to be harming others potentially. Any data or anything that comes to mind that would help or refute any of those thoughts?
Okay, I'm gonna try and respond in a simple response. So ACEs put you at greater risk of negative health outcomes and behaviors, right? So yeah, well, everything we just talked about. Healthy lifestyle choices like going on a walk, going on a run, riding your bike, that boosts your mental health, that reduces stress just as you described. And so I think that ultimately they're kind of like apples and oranges, and that the ACEs are what are creating the stress and the issue and things like that, among other things. But active transportation is a great way, just like going for a run, playing racquetball with a friend, building a social relationship. It's one of the many ways that we can address and comfort ourselves and comfort our community, is how I would respond.
I think what that gets to also is the part on that piece of paper that you put up there about creating and being intentional about our social norms and what we accept and don't accept as behaviors with one another, and how we communicate and educate our public about how we support each other, that taking care of kids is everybody's responsibility, not just the particular parent's responsibility, that we all have a responsibility to be kind, respectful, and treat each other well. Like creating those social norms, I think that's more of the tie back. I don't think I've seen anything other than like the kind of indirect leap that Melissa's making that ties lack of physical activity to higher ACEs scores. Except that a lot of the child activities that can help mitigate or prevent ACEs are focused around physical activities. So parks activities, sports, things like that. So I'd say it's more of like an indirect connection, but maybe not a like tight direct one. Does that kind of make sense?
I think so. Yeah, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Boyette.
My brother-in-law worked for Head Start for 30 years in Missoula. I didn't have a clue what he was doing until I started looking into it. Is there any data that shows if a child goes to Head Start versus a child who doesn't go to Head Start, because they're all little bitty kids, that they turn out to be better kids down the road?
Dr. Garcia, can I put you on the spot for that, or
Well, I can
pass this down? You might be the best person to speak to that.
Well, there is a relationship between early childhood programs and student achievement or student readiness. And there is a relationship between not reading all grade level by the end of third grade and the number of prisons that are being built. That's called the school to prison pipeline. So if by the time you get to third grade and you don't read on grade level, that statistic is being used by the people that build prisons. And that's how they determine how many prisons they have to build for the future. So a Head Start program definitely brings readiness to students, so they can be, hopefully by third grade, reading on grade level. And so readiness really matters, and people already figured it out. If you have low readiness, then you have more dropouts. If you have more dropouts, you have more crime. If you have more crime, well, more prisons. So there is a relationship.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, Councilmember Kennedy?
Thank you, Mayor. Terry Todd, we met a couple months ago and you brought the community organizations together. And the real crux of that was to make sure that the other agencies knew what's going on. In my agency, we work with the Mental Health Center, we work with Aware Early Head Start program, we work with a lot of agencies in town. You wanna just talk about that for just a minute?
Sure. Amanda Stonerock and I, about 3 months ago, created a thing called the Confluence. Because we knew that there was a lot of access points that we didn't know how to connect to. And I may know, but the next person doesn't. And so we brought a group of, I think the first group was 67 providers to the room to talk about what they do and what they saw as gaps in services, and also to figure out how we could better work together. And out of that, there were some interesting things that happened. The first day, we had a presenter who came, Connie, who has, oh my gosh, I forgot her business. That's terrible. She'll shoot me later. But what Connie does is she works with disabled and elderly, and she helps get them into services. And she knew how to fill out the Medicaid waiver. So the Medicaid waiver is one of the most difficult pieces of paperwork that you can fill out to get somebody into assisted living or those kinds of projects. And so the neat thing was 2 members from Rimrock heard about it, called her the next day, and they were able to get 2 clients into services that they didn't need. So what we know is that we have a community that's super rich in resources, but not everybody knows how they all play together and what they all do. The other big thing was getting the faith-based communities to the table, because they provide a lot of monetary support to different organizations. Plus, they have a lot of access to people show up at the church because they know historically, if I come to the church, somebody's going to know where I can go. And so we wanted to create that pipeline so they knew where to refer. We've got a problem in our community where we refer people, but we don't really tell them how to get there sometimes. So if you're at my store, theoretically, if you're downtown and I tell you then you need to go up to Rimrock and then you need to go here in the Heights and then you need to go here on the West End, what happens is people get lost in the shuffle. So we need to have a centralized hub where people can come and figure out where to get the services with a warm handoff. And we have done that well in some ways and not well in others. It's really great with a hot team. They will take somebody to get them to the services that they need. When the mobile crisis response team goes out, they tell them exactly where to go. We just have a lot of community members who don't know where to pick up the phone. With addiction, it's hard to get into treatment centers sometimes. But if you call the right person, they can say, hey, this is the phone number where you can actually get. One thing that we identified at the local advisory committee meeting a month ago was that people were having to take their own chairs to go down and fill out their paperwork for SNAP benefits because there was no chairs. And if the hours on the door were not the hours that they were actually open. Well, when you're trying to get food, when you have food insecurity, you can't even get your SNAP benefits and you can't get your Medicaid filled out, and you're sitting there time after time and just getting more and more frustrated, it's very hard for people. So if we can connect all the services in town who actually do that and lessen the problem, what we find is that the people who live in our community are a lot less frustrated and they actually feel valued and they feel heard. And that's an important key component that we have to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Just a note for anybody who might be listening. There are people taking notes about what's being said tonight so that we don't lose track of these things. Also, you see the QR code up there. If you scan that, that'll give you an opportunity to provide your written input. We can't deal with it in real time tonight, but we'll at least have your input that way. So pay attention to that QR code. Any other questions? Councilmember Rupsis.
Thank you. I guess this is a question across the board. We're here tonight to talk about crime prevention. And we've got organizations, all kinds of different organizations looking at everything from prenatal to seniors. All of you got to deal across the gamut there. If we're talking about crime prevention, what are one or a couple of the key metrics in your organizations that we could track and tie to actual crime prevention, whether it's this year or in the case of Nurse Family Partnership 10, 15, 20 years from now? What do those look like so that we can potentially visualize something as a community that we can see we're moving the needle?
When we go back to our presenters, what order you want to take those? But Terry?
I'll go first just because it's easy. So one of the key metrics that we saw last year was that we had over 26,000 and some odd days of sobriety. Now, when people are sober, they're actually employed. They're usually living in some kind of housing. They're not going to the emergency room because they don't know how, they don't have Medicaid, they don't know how to utilize their doctor's office. And so you're gonna see a sharp decline in costs community-wide. The other thing is we had the chronic utilizer survey that was done by the Downtown Billings Alliance. Some of the people who were on the original survey in 2007 were on the same survey in 2021. There was a collective group of, I think, 6 or 7 different organizations that I know for a fact there were 7 that came off the list last year. One of them was a woman who had not had a job in 30 years. She'd never had a driver's license and it was suspended in 6 counties. And she has had a job for over a year and has her adult children living with her, and they hadn't lived with her since they were 2 or 3 years old. There's another gentleman who, when you look at what he had pulled off of that chronic utilizer survey, he was one of the top utilizers. And he is currently in missionary school in California. So when we take a concerted effort and we provide complete wraparound services for people, they are able to live a little different lifestyle. And so those are the numbers that I like to look at, but everybody has different numbers that they use.
Very good. Zach, you?
I don't think we should skip Dr. Garcia.
Oh, just go. I wanted to say, yeah, sure.
I was gonna present something. So for me, it's clear. Participation in our Kinder Ready program, which is going to be launched 2024-2025 for 288 students age 4. Kinder Ready, that is the area with the greatest gap of school readiness, and that's where we have the most kids of color, Native American, Hispanic, kids in poverty, is the same area of the city. That will generate that our reading proficiency will go from 35%, that's reading proficiency at the end of 3rd grade in Billings Public School, is horrible data. That needs to be increased to, reasonably speaking, hopefully 50% in 1 or 2 years. But that number has to be 65, 75%. That's the real number. And that's going to lead us with more support for our students in special education and other services, that the number of dropouts decreases tremendously. 260 dropouts every year. And those dropouts are mostly on the same community, poverty, communities of color, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, is increased student achievement, participation in kindergarten readiness, more pathways for our students that in turn engages the kids when they're adolescents. So then they don't choose to go on the street or choose to refuse to go to school. They have a pathway, they're active members of society. So that's how increasing the graduation rate is attached to that. That's how I will know. And we should be able to see numbers very soon, because of course I don't want to say this is gonna happen in 10 years, because then what is my metrics, right? I wanna know that I'm making an impact. So I wanna know those numbers. We already saw the math data. It should give you just excitement to see how in 6 months, with the work that has been done, we have been able to increase mathematics, but not in reading. But there's a lot of work to do, but there are matrices that graduation rate, dropout rate, student achievement, and student readiness, participation in our programs that include Kinder Ready and career expansion are the other things that I have mentioned.
Very good, thank you. Anybody else want to comment on it?
So Councilmember Repsis, you said, what's the data that we can see that reduces crime in our community? Is that?
Yeah, if you were to set out some metrics that say, we're gonna target these metrics because we know we'll have an impact on crime.
So I think as part of the Citizen Advisory Task Force for the Police Department, and then connecting that with our mobile crisis unit, we just got the data that came out today, where the mobile crisis unit's been up since October. The city's been invested in that. They've had over 400 calls that they've responded to. Well, each one of those calls, and Chief, I think we talked briefly, but it was around 7 minutes that the responding BPD officers are getting off those calls sooner. So we're getting our crime folks, police department, moving towards dealing with crime and not dealing with mental health issues, behavioral health issues. And if you look at the data that they're reporting, I mean, a lot of these folks are not what we traditionally think of as trying to help somebody who's on the street. We're not sure what's wrong with them, they're laying down, and we're trying to scoop them up, particularly downtown. I think oftentimes that's the vision that gets in everybody's head, but if you look at the data, private residences, living independently, dealing with their children, transportation, and most of these cases are being resolved at the scene, which once again is releasing our police department to get back to addressing crime. And so there's an evolution that'll take place with this. The Crisis Now model is part of what's being discussed statewide. And this is the second phase of that de-escalation of those situations. So I think you should see a direct reduction in crime if our police officers are able to get to what their jobs are that over the last 20 plus years has suddenly become part of their job, which is becoming mental health, behavioral health specialists while they're trying to deal with actual crime. And a lot of folks haven't signed up for that. So I think the Mobile Crisis Unit is starting to show data that would support getting our police officers back into the position they need to be in and letting mental health people help folks that actually just need that support.
Okay.
Add a couple quick little things, Tom. One is, in nurse-family partnership, as you all know, we have tons of data about home visiting programs and the impacts they have. In those, we're looking a lot at employment of the parents, so that economic stability part. The lack of economic stability contributes so much to the stress of a family that, if you can stabilize them economically, that takes a huge load off of their stress burden. How many of them have been able to get out of DV situations? And I think that one also gets back to our crime rates. I think when we have upwards of 60% of our crime related to relational or domestic violence crime, that's something we have to look at. And if we're not moving that dial, then we're not solving the problem. And if you think about all those homes where kids are witnessing that domestic violence, that's what they're learning to do. And that's why we're having the family justice center conversation, right? Because when you need to stop that cycle of teaching kids that that's the way to behave in a relationship. So to me, I think those are two that I'd just add on to the list.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Counselor. We're now more than an hour and a half into our meeting. Time flies. So we haven't heard from the public, and we haven't heard from our other non-presenter guests. And we want to have an opportunity to do that as well as have general discussion. So let's open up for public comment now. People who are with us, if anybody, you've heard the discussion. It's been very valuable, but same deal. If you'd like to be heard, this is your opportunity. We just ask that you tell us your name and address if you're comfortable doing so, and keep your comments to 3 minutes. And then we'll come back and we'll ask for our non-presenter guests some of their reactions and a little bit about what they do. So do we have any public comment at this time? If so, please go to the podium. And again, just so we reduce the amount of transition time, feel free to go up and stand up by the podium if you'd like to comment.
Good evening, Mayor Cole and council members, guests. My name is Amanda Stonerock. I'm a consultant here in Billings. I've been a community member here for over 17 years, working in the nonprofit sphere, mostly with the criminal justice, substance use, mental health, and housing. And I am fortunate to know a lot of the players and be one of those people like Terry described. When you have a problem, they can call and say, Amanda, who do I call to get this person into something? And I can spend 10 minutes, where a case manager who might be in the field for a year or two is going to spend 2 weeks trying to get them in. So we have a significant infrastructure problem related to data and access to where are the beds, who are our case managers that have open availability, what counselors in the community are accepting children. I have 4 kids. We've had a series of different counselors over the last 15 years. It is a hard challenge for people to get a child in to see a mental health professional. And I'm very fortunate that our school district has provided counselors in each of the elementary schools that will sit with my children and have one-on-one conversations when we can't get to a provider that can assist them. Over listening to the presentations tonight, there are a couple of things that I'd like the City Council to consider as you guys move forward in your discussions for next year. There is an immediate thing that each and every single one of you can do in here, and that is putting pressure on the state of Montana to reimburse Medicaid billing that is outstanding right now. This is a problem that's been going on for the last 6 to 12 months. We are seeing providers who are not taking new patients that have Medicaid because they are not getting reimbursed from the state. And I have regular conversations with Medicaid. I talk with Isaac Coy at DPHHS at least a couple times a month, and we're just told you gotta wait. And that is a problem for people that are providing the service. If they can't pay their bills, if they can't pay their staff, they are not going to be able to continue to provide service. And that's something that you as council members can do today, is reach out to our legislature, reach out to the budget office, reach out to the governor. We need to get those reimbursements back into our community. A couple of the discussion points that I heard as we talk about prevention, we often consider prevention is specific to children, but I've heard over and over and over that prevention often has to deal with the adults. And unfortunately, a lot of the adults that need the education that Karen is investing in are those that are involved in the criminal justice system. And if you consider the metaphor of putting your oxygen mask on first before helping your children, we cannot leave off the reactivity and the work that we're doing with our adults. For those of you that are not aware, I run the jail-based pilot program down at YCDF. We have transitioned in the last 18 to 20 months over 453 inmates down at YCDF. Our biggest challenge right now is placements in inpatient treatment. I've had 2 individuals that have gone through there that have not had a level 3.5 care, and we do not have beds for them. In addition, Medicaid is now saying that if they've been incarcerated for over 45 days, they may not pay for it, even though we know there are drugs in the jail, even though we know that there's individuals that are still under the influence in our facility. I can't get them into a treatment facility because Medicaid will not reimburse it. Again, these are immediate things that you can do in working with our legislature to address. Another thing I heard this evening was that we want to keep our children in the home with their parents, and this is going to.
Amanda, I'm just going to ask you to wrap up because you're 3 minutes up.
Thank you, Mayor. And I will present. I'll do some written comments, but I want to point out a couple of investment opportunities. We heard from about daycare centers. I represent a couple of private daycare centers who are working in the business community to try to bring trauma-informed care training. There is nothing that's standard in the daycare world. The state deregulated daycare centers this last year, so now anyone can have a home daycare center without being certified and licensed through the state, and that is causing some significant issues that we're seeing. These are some of these private businesses situations are things that we need to consider in addition to what we're doing in the nonprofit world or the public health world and things like that. I'll continue to provide some other comments electronically, but I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments and your service. Other public comments?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I was not planning on commenting today, so Mayor Cole, I hope you'll wave at me when I'm going over my 3 minutes, because I'm sure I will. Thank you. My name is Naida Hernandez. I'm the Executive Director of Friends of the Children, Eastern Montana. Some of you hopefully have heard of us. A lot of you have not. We're new, but we are based on, we are part of a 30-year evidence-based model, new to Eastern Montana. I'm going to give you the elevator pitch and then move on to just a couple of things that I'm working hard to do that I urge this group to also consider. Who are we? We are early prevention and trauma mitigation for children in our community with the most risks and least protective factors. So we enroll children ages 4 to 6. That's the only time we enroll them. And we follow them with a paid professional mentor called a friend for 12 plus years, no matter what. And that's what we tell the families when we enroll their children. We are with you through thick and thin, no matter what. and it is an awesome, rewarding celebration. We launched in late 2022 in partnership with Billings Public Schools, focusing on 2 schools in town who have a high population of low-income students. We are now, I'm pleased to share that we are enrolling our next cohort of 16 children under our partnership with Child and Family Services. All of the children that we are now enrolling are on trial home visits and part of foster care. So our jobs will be to prevent them from going back into foster care and leaving their homes. Something else we do is we deepen the continuum of care by partnering with behavioral health providers in this whole region. So I love working with other providers in other partnerships. We are actively referring our families to in-home services through YPGR. We're also working in partnership with St. John's United Cares program. I've talked with Riverstone. I've talked with most of the people at this table. Thank you for answering my calls and letting me corner you. I really appreciate that. We also, and other than behavioral health providers, we also work with other youth-serving organizations because we realize that those are the protective factors. So the Boys and Girls Club, with our first cohort, we worked closely to, we were lucky to have you enroll our children even after you did your enrollment, so thank you. So that is kind of our model. I could talk about this forever. 2 things that I really want to bring to light is how much time it takes to be in partnership with other organizations in town. And so it has become a full-time job, and it is a wonderful job to reach out to others, to share what we do, and try to partner in a really cohesive way so that we can serve people with vulnerabilities in the best way we can. So it was music to my ears, Ms. Todd, to hear about and I can't remember what it's called now, but the group that you're putting together of providers to share resources and figure out how we can all work together. But I would love to have even more of that. And how can we be more effective as a community in working together?
Anita, your time is up, so if you could wrap up.
Thank you. Funding is another part too. How can we be more effective as people all going after the same funds to ask for funding as systems rather than as organizations? So I can talk all day about this, but that is one thing I urge this group to consider is how can we work cohesively together as a community for this population and for prevention. Ultimately, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Come on forward, John Forte. Could we just check that mic, make sure it seems like it went soft. I wasn't sure if it was just the battery's dead or just no, we're good. Yeah, so just go ahead and talk loudly. Put your mouth as close to that microphone as you can.
My name is Diane Wilhaven.
Perfect.
I live at 2726 Woody Drive. I have been a resident of Billings since I left Honolulu, Hawaii in 1962 to receive my degree at Rocky Mountain College. And I ended my career of 25 years with the Billings School District. I have come today to tell you, as an individual, I can go to the Salvation Army every week and make sandwiches. I can ride the van on the weekend and deliver meals to the hungry. I can collect blankets for those people who had to stand out in the cold at the crisis center. I can take all of the leftover food I have from any party or potluck that I have to the rescue mission or to the St. Vincent de Paul to feed the hungry. But I cannot provide housing for the unhoused in Billings. I am asking the City Council to come together with your brilliant minds and belief that you are here to serve the people of Billings and find a solution for the unhoused of Billings. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close that and come back to general discussion. Everybody, we're at 7:20, so we're coming up on our almost 2 hours and 10 minutes. So this is the good part. Let's ask some of the non-council members and down here, I don't know exactly what order to go in, but tell us a little bit about what you do, if you had some reaction to what you've heard, anything you want to comment on. You're nice enough to come, but I can't really see names or faces, so I'm gonna count on. Why don't we start with Love Inc. And tell us a little bit about Love Inc. and what your reaction is to what you've heard.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and represent the faith community. Love Inc. is Love in the Name of Christ. We partner we partner with local churches and Christian organizations and businesses, as well as agencies and organizations that are already serving the community. Our intention is to not duplicate efforts or resources. Where we're finding one of our strengths is in education and life skills courses, whether it's parenting, some of the things we talked about that are so necessary, work life, what it takes to be a good employee, and how to get employment, but more importantly, how do you maintain it? We deal with emotional things through our Affirming Potential program, and we also deal with life skills. So it's a holistic program where we're dealing with physical needs because they're taking these classes and earning resources while they're there, but we're also dealing with the mental, spiritual, and relational as well. The church is a huge resource in this community, and we do need to engage it. We need to allow the church to be the church as they're doing that. And the biggest thing we can offer the people in our community is we need to offer hope. There is hope. We are a generous community. There is opportunity for those that are willing to take that next step. If they're willing to participate in their own transformation, there are people here to help individuals to make that process come to fruition. So I appreciate being a part of this. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Boys and Girls Club.
I'll start and I'll let my colleague Nick wrap it up with whatever I don't say. The Boys and Girls Clubs has been serving the Billings community for 52 years. Now we serve kids from kindergarten through high school. Our mission is to inspire and enable all young people, especially those who need us most, to reach their full potential as productive, responsible, and caring citizens. To that end, what we really internalize is those that need us most. We try to place our clubhouses in areas of town where there are underserved youth, underserved families that really could use our support. Currently, we serve the majority of our youth from the schools of McKinley, Newman, Orchard, Ponderosa, Riverside, up in the Heights, Bitterroot, Beartooth Bench, Alkali Creek, Eagle Cliffs, Sandstone, and those middle and high schools that also attend that, as well as having a presence out in Lockwood on the Lockwood Schools campus. As far as some of the things that stood out tonight, especially from what Eric and his colleagues spoke about, 60% of reported crime happening in the household. You're 100% right. The kids that come to club, that is what they see, that is what they learn. So our focus is really on helping our youth develop strong, positive relationships with adults. One of the things that you also brought up. I'm proud of the work that my staff does. One of the things that Boys and Girls Clubs measures nationally is certain outcomes, and some of those are the sense of belonging that youth feel in the clubhouse, the relationships that they have with adults who live outside of their homes. Our organization, our kids reported 83 and 84% on those specific things. That being said, a few things that we are working on moving into the future, some areas of need, social emotional wellness for our youth, helping our kids develop strong peer-to-peer relationships, which is not something that they are vocalizing that they are doing very well, and supporting our teens, our middle and high schools, high schoolers, when they get out of school, what can they do next? They might not be going on to college. What are we gonna help them do so that they can thrive and support families?
Thank you, Andy. My name is Nick. I'm area director with the Boys and Girls Club, so I oversee operations at our Southside Clubhouse, which is the Bear Family Clubhouse, as well as our McKinley Clubhouse. Definitely second everything that Andy has said, and in the 15 years that I've been with the club here in Yellowstone County, I think the huge thing for me has been seeing the growth and the development through relationships. I think a huge part of what can't be understated. I mean, there's a lot to be said for needing to fund these programs, needing to work with adults, needing to be in a position where we are funding these programs.
Sounds like the battery is going on that.
I think so. There we go. That's better. Okay. I don't know. Maybe I turned it in my hand. But the relational component is really the best part of the entire thing. And it's not that hard. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about takes a lot of time, a lot of energy to connect resources, connect people. But if I hope anything can be heard, at least from us and hopefully from others, because I'm hearing a lot about relationship, is that if we just have those in the community that can be committed to just an hour a week. Like, if you could just not watch a sitcom for 1 hour a week and show up to be a coach, to go and help in a program, to be at a school. We have a lot going on around schools. If we actually had community volunteers who were there to see what was happening instead of just basing it off what we're hearing third hand, I think we'd be in a lot better place. And I think a lot of that was spoken to today. If I could just take a second to speak to the previous meeting that we had, I was in the audience for that one, and there was a portion that was on policing. And we talked about the downtown police officers who wear a little bit of different clothing. And I heard one of the council members make a comment about we need to change the way that our police dress. But what I heard from what was said was there's a situation where he was saying maybe you have a high risk person who is in crisis and they are experiencing something that might be real or might not be real. And as police officers are responding to it, they're having a hard time with those police officers. But as soon as they see the bumblebees, they know who they can go to because those relationships have been built. That's what it is. It's those relationships that are there. And the more that we can be focused on that, I think the more we'll see success.
Very good, thank you. Let's pass the microphone to Mike Yakowicz, our representative down there. Next, Mike, if you can comment a little bit on House Bill 872, your role with the Behavioral Health Commission, and you actually have access, or that group, the council, or the legislature has access to an awful lot of money nowadays, and what might that mean? So, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for inviting me here. We are facing a fire of crime, of mental health, a crisis happening throughout our state. At the same time, there is a lot of good going on, like what Terry Todd shared about a lot of the good things that are happening. I applaud our police department and our fire department. I interact with them on dozens of cases. We're living on the south side, from drive-by shootings, being shot at myself, to drug busts, SWAT teams, and abandoned cars, and they were Johnny on the spot, just helping me and helping our neighborhood, as well as the fire department putting out fires in our neighborhood, several just close by where I lived over time. So we have a great challenge ahead of us, and so I applaud you, City Council, who are recognizing that the fire is there, right? That we're recognizing there's a problem there. I applaud our county commissioner also, and then our legislators. Actually, many of them are working right now as we speak. Senator Usher working on justice on committee. We got Senator Solikov working in housing. Senator McGilvery, Senator Lenz working in human development, human services. So on a state level, people are working hard. Not that we're solving everything, but that we have to recognize what you are doing, and thank you for all of your hard work and dedication. Though the fire is burning, and if your house is burning, you're really upset, you're really nervous, it's a crisis. Not every house is burning, but when your house is burning, we have to totally focus all hands on deck on that. So I get it. And so the commission is really set up in addressing behavioral health. The Behavioral Health for Future Generations Commission. It's a $300 million bill, Bill 872, House Bill 872, which the legislatures on both sides, as well as the Department of Public Health and Human Services, and as well as the governor, irregardless of what side party they're on, has rolled up their sleeves
and acknowledge that we are facing a statewide crisis in behavioral health. Many people have told me that this is the first time in years so much energy, time, and money has been invested in this. And it is a bipartisan investment. I just wanted to share, and I think, first of all, thank you, Mayor, for coming to, or thank you, Library, for having our open house here, and Gavin for our town hall meeting that many of you came to. Thank you, Mayor, for coming to our commission meeting at the Boys and Girls Ranch. You gave a great talk and encouragement and also challenging us to do right. We came out with 5 initiatives, and the mayor asked me to bring them out because it is a clarion voice that we have a problem, but at the same time, we're working on it. One is we're investing $7 million into residential beds. So we know that there are kids out there and adults that need acute care. What does mom or dad do when their son, their daughter, their husband or wife cannot be taken care of? Where do we send them? There are beds there in certain locations, but not workforce. So this money is going towards workforce, whether it be Chaudère, whether it be the Boys and Girls Ranch, many other facilities around Montana. Secondly, we're investing $7.5 million into a community-based court-ordered evaluation. Long story short, if I'm arrested and I have behavioral health issues, I go before the court, the judge will say, I will not sentence you until you're evaluated. Well, often the case, many people are sent to the jail waiting for this court-ordered evaluation. That can take weeks, months, and maybe a year until they're processed and go to Montana State Hospital. We're investing this money so that we can hire people professionally who can do the court-ordered evaluation locally in the counties and get the process flowing, getting them out of jail, getting them into whether it be sentencing or treatment, and get them on the road to recovery. Another one is $7 million in mobile crisis, as we heard earlier, as well as crisis receiving and crisis stabilization. So both for what we heard with mobile crisis, as well as the crisis center here in Billings under Marcy Neary's great leadership. We're investing in about 4 or 5 cities around the state to get them going strong. We know that they can do a lot of good, like we heard here, and we want to invest in them. The fourth one is $500,000 in crisis work curriculum. So just imagine, here in Billings, we got a lot of crisis intervention training, a lot of training in urban Montana. But in rural Montana, frontier Montana, Bob or Bill, who's taking care of someone with acute behavioral health, schizophrenia, paranoia, delusion, they may not be trained to know what to do. He's a police officer, he's maybe someone working in ER, but not trained in that area. We're going to invest in curriculum to help people understand how to address and how to deal with people with behavioral health needs. And finally, another one that's really getting a lot of inspiration and traction, or encouragement I should say, is under intellectual and developmental disabilities when there is a low, for lack of better words, entrance level workforce. They may get paid $15 an hour, but they do incredible work helping people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. High burnout, high attrition rate. We want to invest $600,000 to get this level of workers accredited, get them trained so that they can advance quickly to higher salary. What that happens is it empowers them and it keeps people there working with those kids, autism, maybe born with developmental or intellectual disabilities. Huge need in Montana. So we will continue to meet. We'll meet in Havre in March, and we'll continue to drill down. We're getting ideas from many of you here around the state on what's working, what's not working, and solutions. It's encouraging. It's not going to be solving everything, and a lot of what's going on now is boots on the ground with a lot of you here. But I just want to reassure you that on the legislative level, none of us are perfect, but there is a effort and energy among the legislature, among the departments, and among the governor to address this crisis that we're facing in Montana. Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Representative. We appreciate your service and your efforts there. Ellie, I don't know if you want to chime in about Family Justice Center or whatever's on your mind.
I would love to chime in. I always have things on my mind. There's a lot of really hard and harrowing statistics that we're learning about today, and for the public, a question often arises, well, what are you gonna do about it? What's the solution? And so I'm very happy to be the positive member here to tell you that we are doing something about this. And the answer is a Family Justice Center. And so thanks for the shout outs earlier. A Family Justice Center is a multi-agency service center for victims of family violence. This includes domestic violence, human trafficking, child abuse, elder abuse, because all of these issues are interconnected. And so what that looks like is a giant building with government and nonprofit agencies. So we spoke about collaboration and how it's hard when you're seeking services to go 10 minutes that way, then 10 minutes that way, and what if you don't have transportation? What if you don't know where the location is? And so the idea behind a Family Justice Center is putting that all in one place, where everybody that works there is trauma informed and operating under the same principles, and can give and empower victims and survivors to get the services they need. When we talk about metrics, family justice centers on average in communities that develop them experience 50% reductions in intimate partner homicides. Fortunately, that's not a significant problem specifically in Billings. However, we count homicides differently in the United States. We count them by just perpetrated by a firearm or by another person, but what we're not counting are the people that are dying from overdoses and suicides who may be victims of abuse, and that's the reason that they are no longer here with us. And so we want to address the people that are falling through the cracks, and a Family Justice Center does that. I'm trying to be quick because I know everyone wants to go home. So where we are in that process right now, I started my year of service in February. So far, we've gone through a study tour, a strategic planning session, and we're opening phase 1 of the Family Justice Center, hopefully in the spring. We have 8 different work groups of different community members, many folks that are sitting at this table that are talking about, these are the questions, this is what we want our Family Justice Center to look like. So it's happening. Maybe I can get some of that $300 million. Lots of questions. The city council committed to hiring a full-time coordinator to continue the development process after my year of service is done in 4 weeks. So this is a sustainable project. We're going to break the cycle of violence in our community and show our survivors and victims that they deserve the best that we have. So if you want to talk to me more about that, I'll just hang around. Thanks.
Thank you, Ellie. Great work. Everybody's worked on that. Dr. Garcia, you have more? Feel free.
I'm very thankful for all of the partnerships. Today we met with Riverstone Clinic. We have tremendous projects ahead of us. Boys and Girls Club, we have great projects. I met with Mike Jakovich as well about the mental health. So I'm meeting with you and many of you for various things. I am hopeful about the future of Billings, the city of Billings. I think we have the right people with the right heart. I think these are difficult times, but I know that the future is bright because of you and the people that are involved, the people that are here. The best days of Billings, the city of Billings, are ahead of us. I think that the best thing we can do is work together. Yes, there's things to tweak. There are things that we need to listen to. There are things that we don't know. But I think keeping this communication, this engagement as a community will make a huge impact. And we'll see it in the future generations. We're doing the best for our kids, the best for our future. So just kudos for the city and for the mayor and the team.
Thank you very much. Okay, this is an opportunity just to have a general discussion or ask questions. I want to kick it to everybody, not just council members, but individuals here. I'll start us off. Karen, would you tell us a little bit more about the mental health center? The city doesn't have any direct involvement there. How's the mental health center funded? What does it do? We've also got our commissioner here, and Commissioner Morris, you might want to jump in here as well. But just tell us a little bit how the mental health center works.
I know how prevention through the mental health center is provided, and that's through state grants and federal grant. But outside of that, I can't answer, so I'm going to pass this over and let Commissioner.
I almost said Commissioner Kennedy, Councilmember Kennedy also. We'll start with Commissioner Morris and hand it to Councilmember Kennedy.
Hi, my name's Mark Morrison, I'm County Commissioner. And I don't know that I can answer entirely how mental health works. I know that we fund them some money, I think about $300,000 through the mental health safety levy, which was passed through the county, I think back in about 2010. And this year, the bulk of that money went to the crisis center. They got about $1 million, right, Zach? We did it through substance abuse. And so mental health it's run by Rod Ostermiller and Janelle Ball. Bell does the clinical side of it. And we utilize them down at the detention facility as Representative Yakowicz stated, there's people that are waiting at the detention facility that can't move through the criminal justice system until they're adjudicated that they can stand trial or they can assist in their own defense. And that's, when you think about it, a person who has mental health and is sitting at the jail, if they have to sit there 3 months or 12 months, I mean, does anybody in this room really think they're going to get better sitting there at the jail if you have mental health? And the answer is no. And it's a horrible place for them to sit, and unfortunately, that's where we are in the state of Montana at this time. The only place that is by state law, the only place that can adjudicate them and say that they're able to stand trial or not able to stand trial is over at Galen. And they have one person that can do it there. There's 56 counties in Montana, so everybody can figure that math out for themselves. And I don't want to be all doom and gloom, and I think Superintendent Garcia, hit the nail on the head. Yellowstone County is a great place to live. There's no place else that I want to live. I live here because I love it. And I think that there's probably some hiccups here, and we heard from Terry Todd up there that there was 67 community-based organizations that are trying to work on programs here in Billings. And I wouldn't have thought it was quite that high. I'd have thought we were maybe 40-something. And I think rightfully so, as everybody's pointed out there on the panel, everybody, they somehow need to integrate their programs so either they're not duplicating what each other's doing or they have a referral system. So it's easy for, if you're Karen Sylvester, and Karen deals a lot with kids, and if she hears that there's an issue with the family, she can say, well, you need to go talk to this person over here or this organization. And the other thing that I like that they're doing is they're starting to collect data. And to make good decisions, you need good data. And so I think that's evident in, Melissa crunches the data, and I know that substance abuse is working on, there's a company, I think you're using out of Bozeman, that's trying to collect data across the spectrum here in Billings from organizations so you can document who the chronic users of our resources are, and that I'm not giving Mike money this morning and Rufus Tom isn't giving Mike money this afternoon for the same deal. So I really think that Billings is a great place to live. Yeah, we've got some hiccups here. We're working on the criminal justice problem. We're working at the jail. The youth service center is another whole discussion by itself. But we're working, trying to work through those situations. We are working on the short-term detention facility for people that Chief St. John and his people come across that have to go to jail. So there is a lot of hope. I mean, Billings will look entirely different here in a couple of years.
Very good. Appreciate it much.
And I should say, next Monday at 2 o'clock, Schutz Foss will be back, and they will be answering the questions we had from their first presentation a week or 2 weeks ago. So if anybody wants to come, hear it direct from them.
Great,
That's
and that'll be on that short-term detention facility.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Councilmember Kennedy, anything you wanted to add about the mental health center?
The mental health center is funded, it's an 11-county mental health center. It used to be a state-run agency, and when we went to private nonprofits, it turned into a nonprofit back in the 80s. And when it happened that way, we used to live off, I was on the board for 30 years, so we used to live off of grants from the state of Montana. The state of Montana no longer offers the grants, they pay fee-for-service. So everything for the last 15, 20 years has been fee-for-service. So all of your monies that come in are dependent upon the client showing up and billing for those services. So the mental health center offers the most severely mentally ill folks in town that no one else will take. And what always happened for years is the mental health center got whoever, when everybody else would not take them. And that still happens today, but a lot of people, I know Rod has changed the face of the mental health center, and people are starting to come through the door more and more. The biggest problem is when you work with folks that have some severe mental illness, it's getting them to show up to the appointments. And the state learned years ago, not when you were there, Mike, but the state learned years ago that most of these people don't show up, so they won't pay for the service. So you may have providers there that that have spaces and waiting for people, and no one's showing up, and no dollars are coming through the door. Rod has done a great job. I think you're at a rate of, I think, a 60%, or is it 60% now of people showing up for services. They've done just about everything to get the people there. The biggest problem we've had, and this happened 25 years ago, the state decided not to pay for prescription coverage. That means that you used to have the mental health center every day give the prescriptions to the clients and make sure they took them, and were able to help them with the control. Because that they no longer paid for that, you saw an upswing in mental health services in the community, and a lot of them never did get services. So the mental health center is alive and well. Rod and the staff have done an exceptional job, but they are the catch-all for all mental health services in this community. And when you look at the services, the amount that the county gives is a smaller amount, but the state is the largest provider. What's really helped in the community is the PATH program and the PAC team, as they have gone out and worked with people day in and day out, 24/7. And that, I think we're running 5 PAC teams in the city right now, and that's 5 to 7 providers that help with those services. Mental health is a huge issue in this community, and we also passed about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, co-occurring, that your alcohol dollars, once we reach $1 million in alcohol dollars for all the counties, then the money goes into co-occurring. So you can use it for co-occurring mental health and substance abuse. And so those dollars have been building over the years because Montana has one of the highest alcohol consumptions in the states. And because of that, we're seeing those dollars keep on going up. But really, as you talk, it's all fee for service, and I have to commend the mental health center and the people working there, that the state does pay it, but it's you've got to bring those people in. And that's where the chief and his department have worked well with Rod and the Mental Health Center to bring people in and get them the services they need. That's real important.
Very
I hope
good.
that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely, very helpful, I appreciate that. Abel, this is your opportunity. Questions, comments, other input, Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I heard the statistics from Riverstone Health about high school violence, fights, violence between students within the high schools. And that sounds like a really concerning thing. To me, it sounds like a very concerning thing because you already have young people who have learned to settle their differences through violence. And I was wondering, I was really wondering, and I think a couple of years ago, I asked the chief that the number had kind of gone up and apparently continues. What kind of interventions, if a youth is at the age of 15, they're 3 years away from adulthood, which means real prison, real jail. So what kind of interventions are helpful at that critical age before they become adult and end up in our detention center and grind through the criminal justice system? Are there any, or can anyone speak to that? Thank you.
Thank you, and that's just an open question, or
Yeah.
were you pointing it toward somebody in
Someone.
particular?
So there are a number of evidence-informed curriculum that are school-based curriculum that address healthy relationships and interpersonal communication and stuff like that. So there are some there's one called Dating Matters. There's another one called the 4th R, which is relationships. And so, are you familiar with others?
Those are the two that I know most. I know Carbon County uses a unique one as well, but I can't remember the name of it.
So in terms of interventions for interrelational communication and stuff, peer-to-peer in schools, there are a number of curriculum that you can deploy in schools to help with that.
Well, the data that historical data. So I check in with my principals frequently. Those fights that people use to describe that happen heavily in our community, I don't see them. I'm not saying that kids are not fighting, because they might be fighting outside, but in the school grounds, very few times. But one of the things that is important is character development. Character development programs that we're partnering, actually we're bringing Rocky Heron, he's going to talk to our kids, as a role model, in partnership with, I can't remember the organization here, but we're bringing character development programs to our high schools, but I think also it's a cultural thing. For instance, there was this issue about McDonald's not wanting to serve our kids because our kids is, it's an embarrassment. I feel embarrassed. Although it's a cultural thing and it requires more than the superintendent saying behave. It really goes back to how we're raising our kids and those social expectations that Eric just talked about. That is wrong. How we take care of our schools, how we, if our kids are not able to behave in the restroom or vaping in the restroom, social expectations have to change. So as far as the superintendent goes, when I hear that we have to be strong with kids misbehaving, I'm all for it. All for it. Like, make an example. Because everybody needs to know by that example that that's unacceptable. And we need to say it, and it's not, you made this action and it's because you're traumatized. No, forget about the trauma. You're making this decision, and we're going to hold you accountable. So that is the position that we take And we're starting early. You know, we have frameworks, middle and high school. We're opening frameworks elementary. That's a new thing. Because we're not going to accept certain behaviors. And we're going to bring responsibility to the parents too. So if you want your kid 2 weeks, 3 weeks in frameworks, or you want it 2 months. Because if you want it only 3 weeks, you're going to have to take some courses. And you need to be a part of those courses, and it's parent education. So that's the way I see it, but this is reactive. You know, we have to really go back to a society and setting those expectations, because it is everybody's responsibility. And good for that gentleman that said, I'm not going to serve these kids. Because honestly, the conversation with the principal says, well, we cannot be an embarrassment in our community. Wherever we go, we are Billings. We represent the city. We represent our community, our parents, our families. That's an embarrassment. I don't want to see my name associated with that, but of course I have to take responsibility for that. But it takes more than just saying behave. It really takes us all in preventive, and also when it comes to discipline, being very tough with the kids, because they need to know that behavior is unacceptable.
Very good. I think, Chris, you want to jump in. You want to pass the mic down, or you can just talk really loud?
I can project. Okay. So unfortunately, just over this weekend, not on school grounds, but I understand there was a set of videos floating around of very disturbing of behaviors of kids fighting, bullying. I actually wasn't able to open it, but in hearing from coworkers, it would be just as Dr. Garcia stated, just embarrassing the way what was going on physically.
Adults and kids.
Yep, adults and kids. So it is real, it is happening, and as much as we have positive, and we could have had 60, 80, 100 people around this table working positively, they are working positively, we have serious challenges. So just wanted to add that. It was so recent, just shared, over the weekend. So.
Okay, very good, Chris. This is just for input by members on the table right now. So, other questions or just comments? We got 25 people here. You gotta ask other things. Terry.
Mayor Cole, the last thing, Councilmember Joy, the thing that I think we are absolutely missing in our community is strong mentorship. So if we had some Indigenous grandparents councils, if we had some strong mentorship working with our kids who are in middle school and in high school, what they're going to provide is some strong structure that encourages people to live different. They may not have positive role models at home, but if they have positive role models engaged in their life, like we see through Boys and Girls Club, like we see through Big Brothers, Big Sisters, those kinds of things make impacts. And if you look at specifically in Saskatchewan, they did a lot with Indigenous grandparents councils. It makes a huge difference in our community. And so that's something I think we're missing across the board.
Thank you.
Great input. Other things. Don't be shy. You've been here a couple hours. We're going to try to wrap up. You've been a great group. Councilmember Shaw.
I just have a comment, and it's kind of jumping ahead. I'm looking at the clock, but jumping ahead to this next steps. And this is just for everyone in general, because I so appreciate all the work that everyone does. But just to change the topic a little bit to money, because that's what we deal with a lot and are thinking about. The city's not sitting on a giant pile of gold like some people think, unfortunately, to throw at all of these problems. But I just want to express that one area that I find difficult sometimes is that it's hard for us to put together all the pieces of how everything works together and how city funding could support broader efforts that cross different entities. And so however, going forward, however we can do that better so that when proposals come to the city, it's very clear, okay, we're asking for this funding, but it's going to help XYZ organization because we've identified collectively that we're missing this piece, would be so helpful, because we don't work in your worlds every single day. And so trying to understand how it all goes together, it can sometimes feel like a little bit of a monumental task, and then knowing how to allocate what isn't a lot of money, but is a small amount of money, but hopefully, potentially, that to put forward some of these efforts.
I'd just like to, personally, I would like to know that we're making the best impact and that we're, as Councilmember Rips just brought up, we're achieving things that can be measured so that we can look back on that data and it helps us to then continue on with funding in the future. So I just wanted to put that out there as kind of my comment for next steps, to have in the back of everybody's mind, because I think as a community, I think we could do better about that, in terms of especially approaching the governmental organizations for funding, so we understand what's the county funding, what would the city fund, how would that work in all of these spaces. I'm looking forward to that being a future conversation, but one that I think we can do better at, all of us, myself included.
Very good, thank you. Other input, comments, questions? Melissa?
I just want to piggyback a little bit on what Councilmember Shaw and Councilmember Rupsis have brought up regarding data and funding. I think, I don't know all the money or the gold pots you're sitting on, but my understanding is that a lot of them are less restrictive, right? Like they don't come out with saying, you must achieve this prescriptive deliverable by X, Y, Z. I think this is the city's opportunity to allow the community to innovate. But I don't want to speak for all the other panelists, but I think what we see is you need to let us innovate and you need to let us do it on a longer term. Data is not going to show improvement in 1 year when you're truly looking at prevention. These are complex generational issues. They're not going to get solved overnight. And so I think that would just be, as your advisors of sorts, it's not just waiting the long game, but allowing us to kind of say, trust us. It's evidence-based, so the data will come, but it's not going to be on a 6-month progress report. I don't know. I'm seeing nods, so I'm not alone here, but yeah.
Okay, thank you for the point. Anything else? Before we call this a wrap.
I guess there's one thing I would like to add from what you had said, is I believe that when somebody comes to you with a proposal, they should also come to you with a list of partnerships and MOUs. So they come and they say, the people have collectively gotten together and agreed that this is a great project and we'd like to move forward, and these are all of the people that support it. When we apply for federal grants or for state grants or different things, they want to know who your community partners are. They want to know who you have members of agreement with, of understanding with, and how everything is being shared. And so I believe that is something that's extremely valuable, because if we're not working together, we're not fixing the community problem. And I know that was one of the things that we found with the House bill, with the Behavioral Health Commission, is Yellowstone County had not come together and worked together and come up with a great plan. And so that was part of this getting together as the confluence was, how do we support each other and how can we collectively work together? And I think we're beginning to see that, and so that's absolutely refreshing. But I think that's something you need to ask for, is who are your partners and who do you have MOUs with?
Very good. Thank you for that point. Nobody else is jumping up and down. So we will call this conclusion to item number 1 and appreciate everybody's input. We've got just a little bit of heads up on future agendas. We'll have another opportunity for public comment before we adjourn. If any of our guests need to leave, though, please feel free to do so. Also, members of the public, feel free to. The rest of our discussion will probably take us another at least 5 to 10 minutes. So, well, I apologize. Our next step, there is a next step item on our agenda. Chris, this is where you could fill in here a little bit.
So, one is, as you stated, Mayor, earlier, this has been recorded. We've been taking notes and information. So no, we didn't come in here with a prescribed plan, say, oh, here's exactly what our next steps, otherwise we wouldn't have been listening. So we are taking this information in, so thank you for sharing it. The council will, over the next 60 days or so, get into setting priorities for the next couple of years. And we know, just based on what we've been talking about for several years, we know that improving the safety in our community will remain at the top of that list. And many of us, per the conversations we've been having, I know are very excited that tonight we were talking about prevention in a real way. So what do we do with that? And as limited as our financial resources are, and I can get off the tracks of being perceived as only looking at finances. There's something that's even more valuable than money that there's less of, and that's time. People donating their time to kids, to families, to neighbors, to individuals, we heard consistently is something that's lacking in our community, and it's not going to fix itself. Even with 100 organizations, they need volunteers and people to dedicate their time. So we've collected all this. We will be priority setting, but the part of the purpose of this meeting, I believe, was not just for the city to hear things, but for our community to hear things as well. And our partners, as that they can take of this information back to the health department, back to the school district, back to each of our agencies, and all those who aren't sitting here, but they know they work in the space, and they've heard just one more conversation open to the community of what our community is looking for. So all of that will be collected. I could get into the dollars of our crime prevention fund, but frankly, I don't think it's really fits where we are in the discussion. But I am proud of the fact that this council and prior councils has been investing some of those limited dollars in absolutely way upstream prevention, but they're all catalyst dollars. They're not going to solve the problem in and of themselves. They're meant to be a catalyst to frankly show our community this investment really would make a difference. So how will we go about taking care of that long term? So I'll end my comments there. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. So, we don't have a clear set of next steps. If anybody wants to suggest those, but you heard Chris, we'll take it into account when we get into our own planning session. I think that's probably where we'll leave it, unless there's a waving hand. I don't see any waving hands. So we'll conclude there with item number 1. Our second item on our agenda is just a preview of upcoming agenda items. Chris, I know you had a couple things that you wanted to remind us of over the next month or two.
So the first one that really is directly connected to this is looking at calendars and seeing, does March 4th and 5th, which is a Monday, Tuesday, that's a different calendar than usual. That's a Monday night work session, but would a Monday afternoon, Tuesday, is that a good retreat time? Or March 15, 16, which is a more traditional Friday, Saturday? Those are some dates looking at the calendar on the staff side of the equation that that all the key people are available to be there in that. So I'd ask you to look at calendars there.
Can you repeat those?
Yes. So the Friday, Saturday, March 15 and 16. Actually, I misspoke. Most staff, we have a couple of key missing, but on March 4th and 5th, that would be a non-traditional Monday, Tuesday. And that was another couple of days that we had jotted down to do a retreat, to do where we take the 24 hours, day and a half, and really kind of zero in on, okay, how do we advance our 5 strategic goals that we've set over the past several years? That's one. Secondly, you saw in the news, very different subject, but exciting for us, right? A roughly $50 million investment in our community to have this state of Montana's first veterinary medicine school. In that, like the first medical school that got opened in Billings, Montana, in the state of Montana, here in our community, it's a partnership there. They very much want a partnership and a proximity with a project related to the animal shelter. So I'm going to be coming to you in February, early February, not with every I dotted and T crossed, but frankly to see if the council will make the policy commitment that the city would, if some of its land is the right site to locate these 2 of these facilities, that they would use our ground to do that. So that'll be coming to you. And again, I can't emphasize enough, we will not have every T crossed, every I dotted, but all those involved really need to know is the city willing to be a partner in that way? And land is probably one of the more easier ways that we can contribute than dollars. So those are a couple of significant policy issues coming to you up in the upcoming several weeks, 4, 6, 8 weeks.
Very good. Any questions for Chris about either of those items at this point? At this point, Chris, just to clarify, you're only asking, we kind of check our calendars, if we got some on the retreat dates.
Yep.
Give you some feedback, formally, informally, send an email, give you a call, whatever, so you can start gathering that information.
Yeah, better by email, just so we got it in writing and we can try to coordinate things, and won't call a scheduled meeting a rolling meeting, just trying to set the date. So I think we're safe emailing each other just on a date we're trying to find. That's not a policy decision, it's a schedule.
Councilor Dulick?
Chris, are you thinking like 2 half days or one full day, 1 half day, or 2 full days, or what's at this point?
I guess honestly, I really look to you guys. What will be the most productive? So just because we've done it, I mean, we've evolved it a lot over the past 5 years, from just being a few hours to being, some time over 2 days.
So, and for new council members, I guess in the last couple of years, we've had afternoon or evening with dinner.
Yep.
And then followed by a full morning the following day. So it's roughly
24 hours probably.
Well, over a 24-hour period, but only 8 hours of work time.
Yep.
Typically. So, okay. Check your calendars, appreciate that. Any items of other council discussion before we open up for final public comment on non-agenda items? Our council members, not seeing anything. So before we adjourn, this is a final opportunity for public comment. If there's things that anybody wanted to comment on, especially things not on our agenda, please go on down there to the microphone. And we just ask that you tell us your name and address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Yes. Hello. I'm here for the people of the homeless people of Billings. Okay. I'm myself homeless. There's like a couple things I want to discuss. Okay. One is the way like people look at homelessness is like it's something out of this world. Okay. And I myself personally don't care what people think of me. You know, that's really one of the reasons why I'm here right now. You know what I'm saying? And to speak for all of my fellow homeless people out there, but it's ridiculous. And this town has a lot of hatred and a lot of resentment for homeless people and drug abuse users and everything like that. You know. Sorry for, I'm a little nervous right now. And it's getting to the point where I've been here for almost 10 years, off and on, and I've seen nothing change at all. You know, and it's very sad to say that, in front of all you guys. But I do have to agree with Terry. Yes, the hot team. Yes, they are amazing at what they do. Okay, but other than that, that's the only. And St. Vincent de Paul, and everybody that works there have been absolutely amazing. All right, but other than that, I can't say the same. You know what I'm saying? The mission. Okay. That is a crucial part in what I have to talk about too. They give you 4 days if you're using and drinking out on the streets. They give you 4 days to clean up. All right. And if you don't pass that UA after 4 days, you're terminated. You're terminated for all basically all services until you can pass it again. Okay? And as far as I know, all right, marijuana takes 30 days to get out of somebody's system. All right? And I am a 6'4", 6'2" man, all right, 100 and maybe 60 pounds. Okay? All right? That'll still get out of my system in 15 days. Okay? I've tried getting into the mission for 3 times now. All right? And it is because they don't want to accept people that don't understand things, but that's also because of mental health. You know what I'm saying? So, I myself, as a homeless man, struggle with addiction, okay? And I personally have not been arrested in 10 years since I've been incarcerated through the state, okay? And that is one of my biggest achievements in my whole entire life, okay, so far. And the last thing I want to address is for all the homeless people out there. I know I'm speaking basically on their behalf, because I gathered almost, let's see, I told 30 people about this meeting today over the past weekend. All right, and there's only maybe 2 people I see right now to support me, you know? And everybody was like, oh, we'll go, you know? We'll go.
Sir, I'm just gonna ask you to
Yes,
wrap up.
I
as your
understand
time.
it, I understand it. Yeah, yes, sorry. But, you know, my whole purpose of being up here is to voice the fact that the homelessness community is very, 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 I don't know, how would you say, troubled, okay? Especially over the weekend. There was someone that froze to death because the simple fact is they had mental health, or they were a drug user, or they were kicked out of motels, or Crisis Center, or the Mission. You know what I'm saying? Okay? Did anybody hear about that over the weekend at all, or no? Exactly my point. You know what I'm saying? That could have been one of me or my friends, which was my friends. You know what I'm saying? And I just want to say that we need help, guys. At least somebody to, you know, go down there and be like, hey, you got this, guys. You know? Keep on going, man, one day at a time. At least something. Instead of just, oh, that's just the homeless, you know? They got their spots, you know what I'm saying? They're good. Because we're not. No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate have a great night, guys.
Thank you. We wish you the best.
Yep.
Any other public comment?
I'll say something.
Okay, please go down there. And is there anybody else? If so, please go down to the podium now.
Can I speak again?
And no, only on something. Only on something different that's not on our agenda tonight. Let's just send us an email, okay? Or we can talk afterwards. But we need to wrap up. It's getting late. So go ahead.
I won't take too long. I just want to say that I am also homeless, experiencing this right now. I'm very well educated. I lived in a $1 million home for many years, and for some reason, this is what I need to experience. These people, they're physical abuse, emotional abuse, violence, anger. They're sleep deprived. There's no rest, peace, privacy, hunger, extreme cold. Somebody froze to death. There's no comfort. People are constantly doing drugs to numb themselves, and people are mean and wicked and cruel, and I ponder why money isn't set aside from gambling, or from why doesn't Montana have a tax, 1%, 2%? California has 11%. I ponder why they have to kick homeless people out on the street at 5:30 in the morning to freeze to death until another shelter opens at 8:30. It's just cruel and mean. And people, it's come to my attention, deliberately buy business buildings to keep homeless people out. And if there's any way I can make a difference in the lives of these homeless people, because I do have money and resources and it's coming my way, I will do whatever I can to help these people out. But fundraisers, anything to give these people some rest and comfort that they so deserve. And it's absolutely filthy. The city is, people aren't taking care of the natives and the homeless, so why should they take care of the city if they don't take care of them? So that's all I need to say right now.
Thank you very much. Okay, nobody else has gone up to the podium, so we will close the public comment. And Chris, you had a heads up for us.
Yes, I apologize. Patty Webster, Homefront, in front of you guys, there's a copy of Homelessness is a Housing Problem. I read it a couple of times. It's a 2022, so this is not old data you're reading about 30 years ago. This is extremely recent, and I found it very informative. So that's a gift from Homefront. Encourage you guys to take a look at it. Thank you.
Appreciate everybody's attention and participation. Stay warm, and we are adjourned. Thanks again.